Chapter 1347. When Lei Penghai made his move, Bailey Hongzhuang was also very fast. Her right hand immediately went up to meet the attack. Bang! When the two palms collided, Bailey Hongzhuang took a step back, but Lei Penghai did not move at all. Bailey Hongzhuang frowned slightly. She had already heard that Lei Penghai's strength was very shocking. At this moment, when their palms collided, she felt it even more deeply. Her strength was not weak compared to other cultivators of the same cultivation level, but there was still a certain gap between her and Lei Penghai. Lei Penghai's attainment in strength was evident. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Lei Penghai carefully. No wonder Lei Penghai's body was so strong. He must have spent a lot of effort on the cultivation of his strength. She's no match for him. The spectating cultivators shook their heads. Just from this exchange, they could tell that Bailey Hongzhuang was no match for Lei Penghai. Lei Penghai's strength has always been very strong. I heard that he is a natural strength cultivator. Cultivators of the same level are no match for him at all. Gong Shaoqing and the others also had a serious look in their eyes. They already knew that Lei Penghai's strength was strong, but now they knew more about Lei Penghai's strength. It seemed that this exchange would take a lot of effort. However, compared to the other cultivators, the cultivators of the Star Dynasty also frowned. According to their thoughts, Bailey Hongzhuang should have taken a few steps back after Lei Penghai's attack. However, Bailey Hongzhuang only took one step back. This was a little strange. Lei Penghai looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with a little surprise. All along, not to mention women, even men would take a few steps back when they collided with him. He did not expect this woman's strength to be so strong. It seemed that the strength of this team was not weak. However, no matter how strong the other party was, as long as a team from a dynasty offended him, there was only one ending: death. I'll give you one last chance. Are you going to scram or not? Lei Penghai's voice was full of threats. If it were other cultivators, he would have already attacked. However, he vaguely felt that the strength of this team was not weak. If they were to fight, it would be troublesome. There was not much time left before the ancient ruins appeared. At this time, it was best to preserve their fighting strength. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang sneered and her eyes suddenly turned cold. I'll give you one last chance. Either scram or die. As soon as Bailey Hongzhuang's words finished, Gong Shaoqing and the others had already took out their weapons. They definitely would not leave. The cultivators of the Star Dynasty's cultivators did not have the strength to make them do so. They did not have the strength. The anger in the hearts of Lei Penghai and the rest instantly surged. It had been a long time since they had met such an arrogant opponent. Kill them. The Hongzhuang's ants, the cultivators' was as well. For the cultivators of the Starlight Dynasty, fighting was a very normal thing. They had always been prepared to fight at any time and any place. Do it. Bailey Hongzhuang also shouted coldly. The other party had used such an attitude to humiliate them. If they did not fight back, they would be too weak. Chapter 1348. As Lei Penghai's aura was released, the auras of the cultivators behind him were also released. In a short time, Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest were able to determine their opponent's strength. 1 orange level rank, 7. 2 orange level rank, 5. 3 orange level rank, 3. And 2 orange level rank, 1. Seeing the strength of the Star Dynasty's cultivators, the spectators gasped. All of them were orange level cultivators. Such strength was indeed very powerful among the middle-sized dynasty's team. No wonder the Star Dynasty could do whatever they wanted. At the same time, Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest released their auras as well. 1 orange level rank, 5, 2 orange level rank, 1, and 4 red level rank, 9. When the spectators saw the strength of the cultivators in Bailey Hongzhuang's team, their expressions became funny. Damn, are you kidding me? How dare you compete with the Star Dynasty's cultivators with such strength? Aren't you digging your own grave? Even if you want to show off, you have to see if you have the strength to do so. With just this little bit of strength, he can only be crushed. I can already imagine how they'll all die. They're really overestimating themselves. The spectators were speechless and lost interest in watching the battle. After all, there was no way to change such a huge gap in strength. After Lei Penghai saw the strength of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others, his heart was also speechless. Previously, when he felt the power of Bailey Hongzhuang, he was surprised and thought that the other party was not a good person to mess with. Now, it seemed that he had overestimated her. She wanted to compete with them with such strength. She was just digging her own grave. Which dynasty are you from? Lei Penghai's eyes were filled with mockery. He had to remember the name of the dynasty so that he could use it as a model for cultivators who overestimated themselves. Tiangang Dynasty. Bailey Hongzhuang was still calm in the face of everyone's mockery. No one would know the outcome until the very last moment. Gong Xiaoqing and the others were not in a hurry. Their team still had Xiaohe and Xiaobai. Although the gap now seemed huge, once Bailey Hongzhuang used her blood aura, the gap would quickly decrease. Speaking of which, the final outcome was still uncertain. What small dynasty? I've never even heard of it. Lei Penghai smiled mockingly. He had always only remembered the names of powerful empires. He couldn't even be bothered to remember the names of empires that weren't strong enough. Since he had never heard of this dynasty, it proved that the other party's strength was not enough to enter his eyes. Very soon, you will clearly remember the name of this dynasty. Gong Xiaoqing said coldly. Cut the crap, let's do it. Bailey Hongzhuang's voice was cold. At this point, there was no need to waste any more time. Since they were going to fight, they might as well end it quickly. Seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang dared to take the initiative to provoke them despite such a huge gap in strength, the cultivators of the Star Dynasty could not help but laugh. This is too interesting. This is too interesting. The cultivators of the Star Dynasty chuckled. Boss, since they can't wait to die, let's fulfill their wish. Chapter 1349. Then let's fulfill their wish. Lei Penghai laughed, and a huge axe immediately appeared in his hand. Boom! Lei Penghai put the axe on the ground, and the huge weight immediately brought a sound. Immediately after, under the shocked gazes of the crowd, a spiderweb-like crack rapidly spread out on the ground with the axe as the center. Seeing the appearance of this crack, everyone took a breath of cold air. Just from this situation, they could judge how amazing the weight of the axe was. Lei Penghai's mind moved, and the pressure of the Orange Realm 7th level spread out in an instant, quickly enveloping Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. With the appearance of this pressure, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others immediately felt a huge pressure suppressing them. It was as if there was a huge stone on their backs, and their movements became slower. Xia Jiqing, Gong Xiaoqing, and the others felt it especially obvious. The lower the level, the greater the suppression. Under this pressure, let alone the Red Realm 9th level, they couldn't even exert the strength of the Red Realm 7th level. Looking at Xia Jiqing and the others who had been suppressed to this point by just releasing a pressure, Lei Penghai and the others laughed more and more arrogantly. With this strength, you want to fight with us? You are really looking for death. Boss, in my opinion, you don't even need to do anything. We are enough to solve them. Lei Penghai's face was also filled with a presumptuous smile. Indeed, but there is no need to waste time with this kind of trash. The earlier we solve it, the earlier we can rest. After the onlookers saw such a big gap in strength, some of the cultivators couldn't bear to continue watching. This was completely humiliating. Listening to the ridicule and sarcasm of the other party, Gong Xiaoqing and the others were also livid. This group of guys was really too much. This is intolerable. This group of guys is really too arrogant. Xiao He and Xiao Bai couldn't help but explode. After participating in the assessment competition for so long, they had never seen such an arrogant team. Compared with the Bright Star Dynasty's practitioners, the practitioners from the Cosmos Dynasty were not so annoying. Looking at the complacent Lei Penghai, Bailey Hongzhuang's Yuan power poured out in an instant. At the same time, the pressure of the blood aura field exploded. Boom! Everyone could only feel a faint smell of blood spreading in the air. Then, a pressure that was not weaker than Lei Penghai's appeared. In front of everyone's eyes, the two oppressive forces collided with each other with a loud bang. Immediately afterward, Xia Jiqing and the others found that the pressure that had been suppressing them dissipated in a short time, and their bodies returned to their previous lightness. Lei Penghai couldn't help but be shocked. He looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in astonishment. How is this possible? Bailey Hongzhuang was clearly at Orange Realm level 5. How could her aura defeat his Orange Realm level 7 aura? Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled up into a sneer. Frog at the bottom of the well. It was just a simple word, but it made Lei Penghai's face uncontrollably filled with anger. Damn, woman, you actually call me a frog at the bottom of the well. Chapter 1350. Bailey Hongzhuang's movements were not slow at all. The glass sword appeared in her hand in an instant, and she went to meet Lei Penghai's axe. Ding! The crisp sound of the metal meeting spread out, and Bailey Hongzhuang's figure took 2 steps back. Lei Penghai's strength was really amazing. Seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang did not have any damage under his blow, Lei Penghai's dissatisfaction became heavier and heavier. His whole body once again rushed towards Bailey Hongzhuang. One must know that when he fought with his opponent on ordinary days, just a collision of strength was enough to injure his opponent. Obviously, this Bailey Hongzhuang was also an exception. The most important thing was that Bailey Hongzhuang's cultivation was lower than his by 2 levels, but she could still resist his attack, which made people even more dissatisfied. Ding ding ding. Bailey Hongzhuang and Lei Penghai quickly fought together, and the sound of metal continued to spread. The glass sword in Bailey Hongzhuang's hand also formed a sharp contrast with the huge axe in Lei Penghai's hand. They were not in the same weight class. However, under such a contrast, everyone was surprised to find that Bailey Hongzhuang's sword was not affected at all, which was very amazing. People with discerning eyes could see that the sword in Bailey Hongzhuang's hand was a treasure. If it was an ordinary weapon, it would have already been broken in half under Lei Penghai's axe. For a while, everyone was a little envious. However, this treasure was destined to fall into the hands of the Star Dynasty's cultivators, and they could only watch. While Bailey Hongzhuang and Lei Penghai were fighting, the Star Dynasty's cultivators were also fighting with Xia Jiqing and others. With the spread of Bailey Hongzhuang's blood chi field, the Star Dynasty's cultivators were all affected to a certain extent. Even if they tried their best to offset this impact, it was still useless. Now there was only one thought in their minds. It was really a ghost. What was originally a huge gap had actually been rapidly narrowed at this moment. It was simply too strange. However, Gong Shaoqing and the others had no intention of explaining. Since they had narrowed the gap in strength, they naturally had to seize the opportunity. Although the 2 orange level rank, 5 cultivators from the Starbright Dynasty could only unleash the power of an orange level rank 4, they were not worried. Apart from Bailey Hongzhuang, the strongest cultivator in the Tiangang Dynasty was only at orange realm rank 1. With their strength, dealing with it was not a problem at all. However, Yuan Jixin and Yuan Xiaoman did not even care about the 2 orange level 5 cultivators. They had already turned their attention to the orange level rank 3 cultivators. Those were their real opponents. The 2 orange level rank 5 cultivators were displeased that they were ignored. You're asking for it. Just as they were about to attack Yuan Jixin and his companion, 2 streaks of light, one black and one white, suddenly approached them at high speed. Before they could see clearly what it was, the 2 of them had already been attacked in front of their faces. Your opponents are us. Xiao He and Xiao Bai crossed their arms in front of their chest and struck a pose with their backs facing each other. They looked at the 2 cultivators in front of them and sneered. The 2 cultivators were stunned when they saw the 2 beasts. Who are you? We are the famous black-white double demons. Xiao He and Xiao Bai said in unison. Chapter 1351. These 2 beasts can talk. Hua Jixing could not help but look at Yao Junan, who was next to him. Before he could react, he had seen 2 beasts that could talk. Yao Junan nodded blankly. I think so. Looking at Hua Jixing and Yao Junan's shocked faces, Xiao He and Xiao Bai could not help but look at each other and mocked. Frogs at the bottom of a well. These 2 beasts dare to act so arrogantly in front of us. Let's get rid of them first. Hua Jixing's face was filled with ferocity again. Although it was shocking that the beast could talk, it was clearly not the time to be surprised. Yao Junan nodded, and the origin energy in his body exploded rapidly, attacking Xiao He mercilessly. Seeing that these two annoying fellows dared to look down on them, Xiao He and Xiao Bai's eyes were filled with anger. This was the first time the twin ghosts of Black and White had announced their names in front of cultivators. These two fellows dared to look down on them. They must have a death wish. In the next moment, Xiao He and Xiao Bai attacked ferociously. Bang! Bang, bang, bang. Hua Zhixing and Xiao Bai, who were initially full of confidence, became more and more shocked as they fought Xiao He and Xiao Bai. They did not expect these two beast cultivation to be so powerful. Orange Realm Level 5. They were both at Orange Realm Level 5. Until now, they had never seen contract beasts with such a high cultivation base. It would have been fine if their abilities were not suppressed. However, now that their abilities were suppressed, they could only be beaten up by two contract beasts. This was an insult. It was an insult to their dignity. Bang! Xiao Bai did not give the other party any time to wail and kicked Hua Zhixing's face hard. How dare this bunch of trash fight with them? They must have a death wish. The onlooking cultivators were equally dumbfounded when they saw Xiao He and Xiao Bai. They had never noticed the two contracted beasts from the Tiangang dynasty before this. Although contracted beasts were of great help to cultivators, at their current age, they wouldn't be able to contract beasts for a long time, and the cultivation of the contracted beasts wasn't high either. Only when the contracted beast's strength matures will it be of great use. However, these two adorable beasts had reached Orange Realm Stage 5. This was too heaven-defying. What kind of contracted beast is this? His strength is actually so strong. Master has really picked up a treasure. Everyone couldn't help but be envious. A contracted beast was a cultivator's most trustworthy companion. Now that these two contracted beasts were already so strong, their future prospects were simply limitless. It has already reached Orange Level 5. What a powerful contracted beast it will be in the future. I wonder which cultivator contracted these beasts. I've never seen such beasts before. This is so strange. Some of the cultivators who were not paying attention to the battle stopped when they saw Xiao He and Xiao Bai. This was incredible. Bailey Hongzhuang and Lei Penghai's battle was getting more and more intense. Their battle techniques were constantly being used. Compared to Bailey Hongzhuang's calmness, Lei Penghai's heart was already depressed to the extreme. Chapter 1352. In my opinion, although the cultivators of the Starbright dynasty are usually very arrogant, their strength is not that strong. I thought Lei Penghai was powerful, but now he is being suppressed by a woman who is 2 ranks lower than him. This is going to be a good show. When Lei Penghai heard the mocking from the surrounding cultivators, he was even more furious. These people were just standing there and talking without knowing what they were talking about. Heaven-splitting axe, Lei Penghai shouted as the elemental force in his body surged out. He could not stand to continue fighting with Bailey Hongzhuang. He wanted to defeat Bailey Hongzhuang in the shortest time possible. Only then would his reputation not be ruined. Lei Penghai's hands kept moving and complicated seals appeared one after another. Everyone keenly sensed that the essence energy in the surrounding air was rapidly surging towards Lei Penghai. Just from this momentum, they could tell that this martial technique was extraordinary. Bailey Hongzhuang frowned. If she was right, Lei Penghai's skill should be an intermediate mystic level skill. It was of a high level and powerful. Bailey Hongzhuang, just wait for your death. Lei Penghai glared at Bailey Hongzhuang fiercely. This despicable woman dared to lower his reputation. After all, he, Lei Penghai, was a figure that possessed an illustrious reputation amongst all the cultivators from the small and medium dynasties. How could he allow a woman to affect his reputation? Looking at Lei Penghai's arrogant look, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes turned cold. Lei Penghai, we don't know who will win yet. It's too early for you to make a judgment. Lei Penghai sneered. Do you really think you could defeat me? What a joke. Bailey Hongzhuang was not bothered by Lei Penghai's mockery. The orange level 5 elemental force in her body flowed into her hands. At the same time, complicated seals appeared one after another. The crowd could only see Bailey Hongzhuang and Lei Penghai facing each other. The battle between the two of them was already shocking enough. They just did not know who would win this battle. In just a few seconds, everyone saw a huge axe appear in the air behind Lei Penghai. That axe looked like an enlarged version of the axe Lei Penghai was using. I've already heard that Lei Penghai's axe is an incredible treasure. When used together with a martial skill, it has an extremely powerful might. From the looks of it now, Lei Penghai is currently using this move. This is Lei Penghai's ultimate skill. I heard that Lei Penghai used this skill to defeat a cultivator who was stronger than him. Bailey Hongzhuang's cultivation is 2 levels lower than Lei Penghai's. Now, that Lei Penghai has used his ultimate skill, doesn't that mean that Bailey Hongzhuang has no hope? With Bailey Hongzhuang's strength, it is already very difficult for her to persist until now. Do you really think that Bailey Hongzhuang can defeat Lei Penghai? The balance instantly shifted towards Lei Penghai's direction. Many cultivators had heard of Lei Penghai's name. Bailey Hongzhuang might not be able to make a comeback. Chapter 1353. The origin energy in Bailey Hongzhuang's body circulated in a special circulation meridian, and she acutely sensed that Lei Penghai's move was not simple. The energy fluctuation emitted caused her heart to palpitate. If she was not careful, she would probably fall into danger. Immediately after, everyone noticed that the aura that Bailey Hongzhuang exploded out was also extremely extraordinary, and their gazes instantly changed. Lei Penghai looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in puzzlement. He could similarly feel the might of Bailey Hongzhuang's move. Thinking about it, Bailey Hongzhuang's move should also be a profound intermediate rank martial skill. He did not expect that this unknown dynasty's cultivator had so many methods. Dark sky-colored glazed sword. Bailey Hongzhuang shouted coldly, and a dense mist appeared behind her. Everyone was surprised to discover that these weapons were actually completely condensed from origin energy. A wisp of paleness quietly appeared on Bailey Hongzhuang's exquisite jade-like face. The output of so much origin energy was similarly an enormous pressure to her. She had grasped quite a number of martial skills, but with her current cultivation, the number of martial skills that she could execute was not many. After all, the stronger the martial skill, the more origin energy it consumed. With all the origin energy in her body, it could be said that it was extremely difficult to execute it. If she forcefully executed it due to insufficient origin energy, not only would she be unable to achieve the desired effect, but it would also damage the meridians in her body, causing the opposite effect. In the next instant, Bailey Hongzhuang's hand seals suddenly changed. Immediately after, everyone saw a glass-like light mixed with a tyrannical aura appear from the dense mist. Taking a closer look, the glass-like light was actually a sharp sword. Everyone's eyes lit up. Wasn't the appearance of this sharp sword exactly the same as the sword in Bailey Hongzhuang's hand? Heavens, this Bailey Hongzhuang's weapon actually has a derived martial skill. Looks like they are on par. It seems that this Bailey Hongzhuang's weapon is indeed not simple. I'm afraid it is of the same level as Lei Penghai's weapon. Even if their martial skills are of the same level, Bailey Hongzhuang's cultivation is ultimately inferior to Lei Penghai's. This battle will definitely be won by Lei Penghai. Everyone nodded one after another. Even if Bailey Hongzhuang used some unknown method to suppress Lei Penghai's cultivation, there would still be a difference in the effects of the martial skills displayed by the two people. Most of the cultivators present concluded that the final winner of this battle would definitely be the Star Dynasty's cultivator. However, the Tiangang Dynasty's cultivators had already given them quite a bit of Shak Dynasty's Bailey Hongzhuang's cultivator. Lei Penghai and Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes met, and both of them had a ruthless look in their eyes. In the next moment, the two people's minds moved, and the two powerful martial skills collided in an instant. Boom! A thunderous sound struck everyone's ears. The tyrannical energy wreaked havoc rapidly. Everyone could only see a black and a white light colliding in midair, constantly eroding each other's energy. The sky seemed to have darkened under this attack. Sand and pebbles flew and the wind whistled, blurring the eyes of the surrounding cultivators. The sudden eruption of such a huge commotion attracted the attention of all the cultivators in Wuguang City. Chapter 1354. The cultivators of the Bright Star Dynasty and the Tiangang Dynasty couldn't help but stop their attacks. Such a terrifying collision made them understand that their opponents were not simple. They just didn't know who had the upper hand in this battle. After all, when the two dynasty teams fought, the battle between the strongest cultivators often determined the final success or failure. The cultivators of the Bright Star Dynasty were also a little surprised. Usually, there are not many opponents who could make Lei Penghai use this move. The other party was just a nameless dynasty, but they could force Lei Penghai to use his unique skill. This point alone was enough to let them understand the strength of the other party. Not only Lei Penghai, but they also felt the power of the other party when they fought with the cultivators of the Tiangang Dynasty. It was more difficult to deal with than the dynasty teams they had expected. If they had known that the other party was so difficult to deal with, they would not have competed with the other party for the house. However, now that things had come to this point, it was too late for them to regret. They could only continue. Xia Jiqing looked at the crazy, raging energy, and her clear eyes were filled with a touch of worry. This collision of energy is so terrifying. Will boss be okay? Dong Fangyu frowned slightly. I have never seen Hong Zhuang use this move. This power is stronger than the blue flame sacred palm. Gong Xiaoqing nodded slightly. He had also noticed the situation between Bailey Hongzhuang and Lei Penghai before. He had to say that Lei Penghai's strength was indeed very strong. However, Hongzhuang's strength was not weak either. As for who would emerge victorious between the two of them, he was unable to determine. Yuan Jixin and Gu Xiaoman's faces showed a worried look. There was a two-stage gap between Hongzhuang and Lei Penghai. It was not a simple thing to cross it. With the appearance of this collision, the cultivators of Wuguang City rushed to the place where Bailey Hongzhuang and Lei Penghai were fighting. They wanted to know which two dynasties' cultivators had a conflict. Not long after, the smoke gradually dissipated. Everyone was surprised to find that in the center of the energy collision, a huge, deep pit appeared. Around this deep pit, cracks like a spider web quietly spread out. Seeing such destructive power, everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. It should be known that the cities in this small world were built with extremely hard rocks for the sake of being sturdy enough. However, the collision of Bailey Hongzhuang and by Yunfei's strength was able to cause such great destruction. It was enough to show how terrifying the energy was. As the energy dissipated, everyone quickly looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and Lei Penghai, wanting to know the final outcome. Soon, everyone saw Bailey Hongzhuang. Her pure white dress was now covered in smoke and dust, and she looked a little disheveled. There were a few blood flowers blooming on the dress, like blooming red plum blossoms. It was very beautiful. On the other hand, Bailey Hongzhuang's face was a little pale. It was unknown whether it was due to the exhaustion of her energy or the injuries from the collision. However, from this situation, it could be determined that Bailey Hongzhuang was not having a good time either. Immediately after, everyone immediately looked at Lei Penghai, wanting to know how Lei Penghai was after such a collision. Chapter 1355. They saw that Lei Penghai's clothes were covered with blood, and his pale face was devoid of blood. It was obvious that he had suffered extremely serious injuries. Boom! The sound of a heavy object falling to the ground was heard, and everyone saw Lei Penghai's figure fall heavily to the ground. From the gradually fading light in his eyes, everyone could tell that Lei Penghai had already fallen. Everyone's face was filled with disbelief. No matter from which angle, the Tiangang dynasty's cultivators should have a dead end against the Xing-Ming dynasty's cultivators. However, the result now shocked everyone. How is this possible? Lei Penghai's strength is so strong, but he died in the hands of a woman whose cultivation is weaker than him. This is what it means to fail miserably in an easy task. However, I don't understand why this woman is only at Orange Realm level 5. Why is her combat power so strong? It seems that the Tian dynasty's cultivators are not to be trifled with. At this moment, everyone's gaze towards Bailey Hongzhuang and the others had changed. If they didn't put Bailey Hongzhuang and the others in their eyes before, they no longer dared to hold the same indifferent thoughts as before. Clearly, the strength of this unknown dynasty's cultivator was extremely powerful. Perhaps he was a dark horse that emerged from this medium-sized dynasty. In this assessment competition, the strength of most teams could be judged from the strength of their dynasty. However, there would occasionally be some special situations. For example, a dynasty that was not strong enough suddenly burst out with a few talented cultivators. This undoubtedly became a dark horse in the assessment competition. In their view, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were obviously this dark horse. In this assessment competition, I'm afraid that the Tiangang dynasty will be famous. Everyone nodded. Even if they didn't know which dynasty the Tiangang dynasty was, just looking at the strength of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others, they needed to be careful. The Qingming dynasty's cultivators were fighting with Xia Jiqing and the others. Suddenly, they heard a gasp from the crowd, and they were distracted to look to the side. When they saw that Lei Penghai had actually died in the hands of Bailey Hongzhuang, their hearts were filled with shock and fear. This was simply impossible. With Lei Penghai's strength and battle prowess, how could he be defeated by Bailey Hongzhuang? This woman must have used some despicable means. Otherwise, Boss wouldn't have died in her hands. Hua Zhixing said angrily. Lei Penghai was the strongest person in their team. Once Lei Penghai fell, the strength of their Star-Bright Dynasty's team will be greatly reduced. Yao Zhen's expression also became incomparably ugly. Previously, when Lei Penghai was present, their team could be said to be incomparably arrogant, offending countless opponents. However, now that Lei Penghai was dead, it was likely that many teams would seek revenge. At the thought of this, Yao Junan seemed to foresee the dark days ahead. Damn it! Kill them all! Yao Junan shouted angrily. The cultivators of the Star-Bright Dynasty also found it hard to accept after learning this, so they all burst out in anger. They only wanted to kill all the culprits. Chapter 1356. Even though they knew that Hongzhuang's combat effectiveness had always been amazing, Hongzhuang's strength was still 2 levels lower than Lei Penghai's. Even with the existence of the Blood Chi field, Lei Penghai's strength was suppressed, but it was still at the level of Orange Realm Level 5 or Orange Realm Level 6. What's more, Lei Penghai's background and strength were more powerful than the cultivators they had encountered before. The stronger the background of the cultivator, the more means they had and the stronger their combat effectiveness. This was also why some cultivators with strong backgrounds, even if they had the same cultivation level, their combat effectiveness was far from what ordinary people could compare to. However, for Bai Li Hong's appearance, it seemed that all these factors did not exist. They thought that the battle between Bailey Hongzhuang and Lei Penghai would last the longest. Who knew that it would end the fastest? Boss is really abnormal. Xia Jiqing froze for a moment, then helplessly shook her head and said such a sentence. Yuan Xiaoman's face was full of worship. Boss is really amazing. This is a woman's idol. In ordinary battles, the combat effectiveness of women was often not as good as men. However, the team of the Tiangang dynasty was obviously not like this. Who said that women were not as good as men? Boss was the real portrayal. Gong Xiaoqing, Dong Fangyu, and Bai Junyu looked at each other. The strength that Hongzhuang broke out in every battle was really amazing. This could not help but make them feel frustrated. No matter how hard they cultivated, it seemed that it was impossible to catch up with Hongzhuang. We can't fall too far behind. Let's fight. Bai Junyu shouted. Hongzhuang had already solved the difficult-to-deal with Lei Penghai. The rest was left to them to solve. Ding! The glass sword pierced the ground. Bailey Hongzhuang gasped for breath, her eyes revealing the light of lingering fear. She had to admit that Lei Penghai's strength was indeed very strong. Lei Penghai's martial arts, just now, was really powerful. If she did not exert all her strength to display the dark sky glass sword, she was afraid that the person who was seriously injured would be her. The cultivators selected by the various dynasties were all true genius cultivators, not to mention that Lei Penghai was from a powerful mid-sized dynasty. She understood that if she wanted to completely rely on her own strength to deal with Lei Penghai, it would be impossible to succeed without paying the price of half her life. Now that there were so many cultivators gathered in Wuguang City, once their team's strength was greatly reduced, it was likely that many cultivators would attack them. After all, this was a great bargain. Therefore, when the two martial skills collided, she fused a poisonous needle into the martial skill. It was impossible for Lei Penghai to realize that there was a trap in the martial technique, so the poison needle entered Lei Penghai's body extremely smoothly. With Lei Penghai's injuries, he wouldn't die. He would only die from poisoning. Bailey Hongzhuang stood where she was and quietly glanced at the cultivators who were watching. The cultivators who were originally very disdainful of Bailey Hongzhuang withdrew their gazes after noticing Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze. They did not dare to look at Bailey Hongzhuang. With just a simple glance, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes fell on Xia Jiqing and the others who were fighting. After seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's powerful and domineering side, Xia Jiqing and the others also seemed to have been injected with chicken blood. Their speed was faster and their combat effectiveness became more powerful. Chapter 1357. When Bailey Hongzhuang saw that no one had shown any signs of failure, she felt relieved. As long as it wasn't a critical moment, she didn't need to make a move. After all, everyone in the team needed a chance to grow. Some of the more powerful opponents were the necessary tempering for everyone to improve. Only through these continuous battles could they accumulate more combat experience. In the future, when they fought, they would know how to best display their battle strength. Even though they had to kill monsters every day in the mountains, the intelligence of monsters couldn't be compared to human cultivators. What they could gain was experience in dealing with monsters. Bailey Hongzhuang took out a healing pill from her Qingquan bag and swallowed it. Although there were some injuries on her body, most of them were caused by the exhaustion of the yuan qi in her body. It wouldn't take long for her to recover. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang was watching her teammates fight, she didn't notice that among the spectators, there was a shocked gaze locked onto her. Xian Yuan Huan looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in disbelief. He never thought that he would meet Bailey Hongzhuang in the assessment competition. According to his father, Di Beichen's identity was so noble. Why would Bailey Hongzhuang participate in the assessment competition? However, Bailey Hongzhuang in front of him made him even more experienced. As a small empire, Fengbo country had been living carefully ever since they entered the pocket dimension. As they got closer and closer to the center of the pocket dimension, more and more teams from medium-sized empires appeared around them. In such a place where experts were densely packed, they could only be careful to avoid losing their reputation. Usually he was high and mighty, but after coming here, he realized how big the Shengxian continent was. His original arrogance had disappeared, because if you were to casually find a cultivator here, their identity wouldn't be any worse than his. Not to mention a powerful empire like the Starbright Empire. Even if it were a medium-sized empire, they wouldn't dare to say anything harsh. If they weren't careful, they could lose their lives. One had to know that in the history of Fengbo country, who knows how many times the assessment competition ended in total annihilation. However, the woman in front of him was the woman he used to despise. The strength she displayed was simply amazing. In just a short 2 years, Bailey Hongzhuang's growth was simply amazing. The current Bailey Hongzhuang was no longer someone who could be restrained by a small empire. Now, he could only look up to Bailey Hongzhuang. After seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's battle, Bailey Haoshuan, who was standing next to Xianyuan Huan, was completely dumbfounded. He couldn't believe that this woman with such a powerful combat strength was the trash he used to humiliate. Her strength was enough to make him look up to her. "Your Highness, this woman, is she really Bailey Hongzhuang?" Bailey Haoshuan murmured. The situation in front of him was so shocking that he couldn't believe it. Xianyuan Huan nodded. "That's right, it's her. How is this possible?" Haoshuan of Huang of Bailey Hongzhuang of that was that of Bailey Hongzhe of that was a rank 5 Orange Realm warrior. The strongest person in their team was only at the 8th level of the Red Realm, but Bailey Hongzhuang was already at the 5th level of the Orange Realm. Chapter 1358. Xin Yuan Huan shook his head with a smile, but there was a hint of bitterness in his smile. In the middle of the crowd, Bailey Hongzhuang was so beautiful. Even though she was injured, she was still so beautiful. He could clearly feel the admiration of the surrounding cultivators for Bailey Hongzhuang. Such a perfect woman was destined to be admired and pursued by many men. Originally, Bailey Hongzhuang was his crown princess. This was originally everything that belonged to him, but he ruined it. He regretted it many times in the middle of the night. He didn't understand why he was blinded by Bailey Yuyan. The fairy-like figure he saw when he was seriously injured always lingered in his heart, and he couldn't let it go. He wished that time could go back, but he also knew that he and Bailey Hongzhuang were worlds apart. He didn't deserve her at all. Even though his father and mother had urged him to marry many times, his heart had been completely occupied by that white figure. Other women couldn't enter his eyes at all. Bailey Hongzhuang didn't know what to say at this moment. Since participating in the assessment competition, his original confidence and pride had quietly disappeared. None of the cultivators here were people that he could afford to offend. He could only feel that the pressure was unbearable. Now he couldn't wait for the assessment competition to end quickly. Previously, he thought that participating in the assessment competition was an excellent opportunity, but now he felt that it was really terrible. Watching the teams fall one by one, he was really afraid that he wouldn't live to leave the small world. However, compared with his helplessness and fear, Bailey Hongzhuang was so relaxed. Your Highness, why did Bailey Hongzhuang's strength improve so much? Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Bailey Hongzhuang. When he left Bailey Hongzhuang, his father didn't say anything to him. Until now, he still didn't understand what kind of person Di Baichen was, and where Bailey Hongzhuang went later. However, just from the current situation of Bailey Hongzhuang, he could judge that Bailey Hongzhuang must be very amazing now. Otherwise, Bailey Hongzhuang wouldn't be in the team of a medium-sized empire now. Xin Yuan Huan took a deep look at Bailey Hongzhuang, then chuckled and said, "She should be so amazing." With Di Baichen's status, he could marry Bailey Hongzhuang. This was enough to see how outstanding Bailey Hongzhuang was. Hearing the loneliness and lamentation in Xin Yuan Huan's words, Bailey Hongzhuang's expression changed a little, but he didn't ask any more questions. Obviously, even if he asked again, the crown prince wouldn't tell him. Bang! Bang bang! Xiao He and Xiao Bai made a fierce move at the same time, and Yao Junan and Hua Zhixing fell to the ground almost at the same time. Looking at Yao Junan and Hua Zhixing, who couldn't stand up anymore, Xiao He and Xiao Bai looked at each other with a hint of pride in their eyes. Awesome! Xiao He and Xiao Bai high-fived. This annoying guy should be dealt with directly. With the fall of Yao Junan and Hua Zhixing, the cultivators of the Star Empire could no longer remain calm. The three most powerful cultivators in the team had fallen, and the outcome of this battle was doomed. As long as the two contract beasts attacked again, they would die. Chapter 1359. Xiao He and Xiao Bai also returned to Bailey Hongzhuang's side after the battle. Their thoughts were the same as their masters. Xia Jiqing and the others needed enough experience. When the onlookers saw Bailey Hongzhuang and the two demonic beasts stop, they already understood what they were thinking. In this way, they completely treated the other cultivators of the Star Bright dynasty as practice targets. This was a blatant disdain. However, they felt that it was normal to be looked down upon. Because the cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty had already proved with their strength that they had enough qualifications to despise them. This time, the cultivators of the Star Bright dynasty really failed miserably. After being arrogant for so long, they finally met a tough opponent. The cultivators of the Star Bright dynasty deserved it. They relied on their strength to be lawless. Now they're completely seeking their own deaths. Yes, watching them end up like this, I only feel very refreshed. The cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty have also done a good thing. After seeing that the cultivators of the Star Bright dynasty had no possibility of turning over, many cultivators couldn't help but clap their hands and cheer. The arrogant behavior of the cultivators of the Starbright dynasty had offended too many people before, but they could only swallow their anger because of the strength of the other party. Now that this group of annoying fellows had completely disappeared from this world, they were indescribably happy. For a while, everyone had a better impression of the cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty. After all, the cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty helped them solve a big problem. The cultivators of the Starbright dynasty had already been in a mess, while Xia Jiqing and the others were fighting more and more happily. In such a situation, the cultivators of the Starbright dynasty could only be suppressed. Facing the cultivators of the Starbright dynasty, Xia Jiqing and the others did not have the sympathy they had before. In the process of rushing over, they had seen how many people the cultivators of the Starbright dynasty had killed. If such a guy died early, it was tantamount to saving more people. What's more, the arrogant attitude of this group of guys before had already made them very unhappy. Boom! Yuan Jixin killed the cultivator. Boom! Gong Shaoqing then killed the cultivator. Boom, boom, boom. The cultivators of the Starbright dynasty fell one by one. After Xia Jiqing knocked down the cultivator, she was about to wave to Bailey Hongzhuang. Suddenly, the cultivator quickly got up and fled outside. Seeing this scene, Xia Jiqing immediately chased after him. However, before Xia Jiqing could catch up with the cultivator, the onlookers had already kicked the cultivator back. Go to hell, scum! Xia Jiqing looked at the cultivators of the Starbright dynasty who fell at her feet. She couldn't help but secretly be speechless. Did the cultivators of the Starbright dynasty have heaven's anger? It was a gang. After all, the Bright dynasty, the cultivators of the Bright dynasty, the cultivators of the Bright dynasty, and the others. Xia Yin and Long, Shilong Long Xian and the Star dynasty Yin Xiao, and the others Bright dynasty, and the others. And Hongzhi Shi's. Chapter 1360. After solving all this, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others faintly glanced at the surrounding cultivators. The other cultivators also dispersed after seeing this scene. Since the commotion was over, there was no point in continuing to stay here. However, after this battle, the name of the Tiangang dynasty had entered everyone's attention. Have you heard of the Tiangang dynasty? No, today is the first time I've heard of it. I've never heard of a dynasty called the Tiangang dynasty among the medium-sized dynasties. This name is very similar to the Tiangang sect. At this moment, some cultivators who had seen Bailey Hongzhuang before could not help but show off what they knew. There's something you don't know. The Tiangang dynasty is not a medium-sized dynasty, but a small one. After a cultivator said this, some cultivators who did not know what was going on looked at the person who spoke. Are you kidding? The cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty are so powerful. How can it be a small dynasty? It's a small dynasty. Previously, they were a team of 5. Later on, the other 2 cultivators who joined were not from the Tiangang dynasty, but the Snow Origin dynasty. Although there were not many cultivators who knew about Bailey Hongzhuang and the others, there were still quite a number of them. After all, when the cultivators of the Green Firmament dynasty dealt with them previously, they had attracted all the cultivators in the city with great fanfare. Now, almost all the cultivators who knew that the ruins were about to appear had rushed to Wuwang City. Therefore, many of them knew about Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. After hearing the solemn words of these cultivators, the people who were already shocked by the strength of the Tiangang dynasty cultivators were even more shocked at this moment. The cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty were already so powerful among the medium-sized dynasties. They did not expect them to be from a small dynasty. In that case, this was not something that could be described as a dark horse. This was simply a counterattack. While the cultivators of Wuwang City were still in shock, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others walked into the house one after another. Everyone was very used to dividing the points equally. Everyone's face revealed a joyful smile. The Star Brilliance Dynasty's team is really a group of fat sheep. That's a lot more points than the teams we've defeated before. Bai Junyu's clear and bright eyes flashed with a pleasantly surprised light. This distribution of points was even more than the points he originally had. In this short while, his points had already doubled. The cultivators of the Starbright dynasty have always been looking for trouble everywhere. Who knows how many cultivator teams they have taken care of? Most of these points were not earned by them, but from other teams, Gong Xiaoqing said slowly. As everyone knew, if one wanted to obtain more points, killing demonic beasts was the slowest way. Snatching points from cultivators was the fastest way. We are doing justice for the heavens. Xia Jiqing smiled. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled into a faint smile. These guys can be considered to have committed all sorts of evil deeds. I see that there are quite a number of teams in Wuwang City who hate them to the core. Yuan Xiaoman nodded repeatedly. That's right, I've heard a lot of people talking about it before, but boss, you're really famous now. I can see that everyone is very surprised by your strength. Chapter 1361. Let's see what's in the Qinquan bag. Xiao Hei's eyes flashed with excitement. It was most interested in the Qinquan bag of the cultivators. Maybe it would encounter some great treasures. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly and immediately checked the Qinquan bag of the Star Dynasty cultivators. It had to be said that just by looking at the things in the Qinquan bag, one could judge the strength of the Star Dynasty. There were quite a lot of healing pills and chi recovery pills in there. There were also some other pills so that the cultivators would not have to worry about the consequences of their cultivation. However, in addition to the Qinquan bag and food, there were not many valuable things, and there were no martial arts techniques. There are no martial arts techniques in Lei Penghai's Qinquan bag. This is too strange. Xia Jiqing's face showed disappointment. She originally thought that the martial arts techniques of the Star Dynasty cultivators were very good, and it would be great if she could take this opportunity to learn them. Unexpectedly, there were no martial arts techniques in the Qinquan bag, which was really disappointing. Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but recall the martial arts techniques that Lei Penghai displayed today. The power of that martial arts technique was also great. Their martial arts level is not low. I think they didn't bring it into the small world at all. The Dark Phoenix's eyes flashed with wisdom. Generally, martial arts techniques were very powerful, and most of the cultivators would not wear it on their bodies. Because once it was lost, it would be a huge loss. A powerful martial arts technique was enough to make a small family of a dynasty famous. Even if these martial arts techniques were not their family's treasures, they were still very important martial arts techniques and would never be worn on their bodies. Gong Xiaoqing nodded slightly. Indeed, except for some lone cultivators, there are no martial arts techniques in the Qinquan bag of the other cultivators. It was the same reason that they did not find any martial arts techniques in the Qinquan bag of the Qing Shao Dynasty cultivators. Then there is nothing else that is needed. Boss, these things will be left with you. Xia Jiqing said aloud. As Xia Jiqing's voice fell, Gong Xiaoqing and the others expressed their agreement. Now that Hongzhuang was their team leader, everything was handed over to Bailey Hongzhuang to handle. They had no objections at all. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang didn't refuse. They already had a lot of healing pills and chi-recovering pills, but the more the better. It was also inconvenient for others to put it in their Qinquan pouches, so she might as well put it in her chaos ring. There was no possibility of losing it. It's getting late. Everyone should go back and rest. Bailey Hongzhuang said. With so many dynasty teams in Wuwang City, it could be said to be filled with danger everywhere. After the battle, just now, they had more or less suffered some injuries. If he didn't recover to his peak condition as soon as possible, it would be terrible if something happened. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, everyone nodded. Gong Xiaoqing, Dongfang Yu, Bai Junyu, and Yuan Jixin immediately left the room. Given their current situation, it was indeed necessary for them to recuperate. After Gong Xiaoqing and the others left, Xia Jiqing immediately walked to Bailey Hongzhuang's side, her pretty face showing a look of concern. Boss, you are injured. Shall I help you apply some medicine? Chapter 1362. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others' injuries were not serious, so it did not affect their movements at all. The next day, they inquired about the ancient ruins in Wuwang City and learned about it. Now that the fluctuations of the ancient ruins were getting bigger and bigger, They believed that it would appear in a few days. However, it would take a few days for the restrictions of the ancient ruins to disappear, so everyone still had to wait for a while. After learning about the news, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others returned to the house. Now that there were so many cultivators in Wuguang City, it was easy to get into trouble if they went out. It was better to stay quietly in the house and cultivate. When the ancient ruins opened, they could face it in their best condition. If they could get treasures in the ancient ruins, it would be really worth it. Inside the house, Xia Jiqing and Yuan Xiaoman were cultivating hard. As they saw more and more strong cultivators, the sense of urgency in their hearts grew stronger. It was said that the news of the ancient ruins had alarmed the cultivators of the large empires, and many of them were rushing to Wuguang City. If it was only the cultivators of the small and medium empires, it would be easier for them to get treasures. Once the cultivators of the large empires arrived, their strength was really not enough. In such a situation full of opportunities, they really did not want to be a burden to their boss. Therefore, they were now cultivating hard, hoping to make some progress. After all, the Yuanxi in the small world was twice as rich as the outside world, and the speed of cultivation here was much faster than before. Bailey Hongzhuang closed her eyes. On the surface, she looked like she was cultivating, but in fact her spiritual consciousness had entered the chaos ring. Xiao He and Xiao Bai also entered the chaos ring. Since Baisher had fallen into a deep sleep until now, it had been a long time, and they did not know when Baisher would break through. Baisher has been in seclusion for a really long time this time, and he has not broken through for so long. I wonder what realm his strength will break through to? Xiao Hei's eyes flashed with curiosity. Before this, she didn't know White Lion's identity, so she didn't think much of it. However, ever since White Lion had made such a huge breakthrough, she felt that this guy was quite abnormal. It shouldn't be weak. After all, it has eaten a lot of monster crystals and a Sky Spirit Bear's monster crystal. It should be able to break through to orange level. Xiaobai said after some thought. Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze landed on the sleeping White Lion. The sleeping White Lion's body was very petite, and its sleeping appearance was very cute. Speaking of which, she was also amazed by White Lion's method of improvement. Regardless of whether it was a human cultivator or a demonic beast, if they wanted to increase their cultivation, they would need to cultivate diligently. Normally, it would be extremely difficult to increase one's cultivation by one level. However, the White Lion did not need to go through so much trouble. He only needed to continuously consume spirits to increase his cultivation. This should be a method that only Beast Kings could use to increase their powers. As long as there was an endless supply of demon crystals, he believed that Baisher's speed of improvement would become faster and faster. Thinking of this, Bailey Hongzhuang's heart was filled with joy. This meant that White Lion's future was filled with endless possibilities. However, as White Lion's powers increased, she was afraid that the monster crystals he would need would also be of a higher grade. This was not a simple matter. Chapter 1363. As the appearance of the ancient ruins got closer and closer, there were more and more cultivators in Wuguang City. The streets that were originally relatively empty were now filled with cultivators, and the entire Wuguang City was overcrowded. There were many things that led to a fight. Sometimes there would be a room-snatching storm like what Bailey Hongzhuang and the others encountered. On this day, the news that the ruins had appeared quickly spread in Wuguang City. Every day, there would be cultivators going to check the situation of the ruins. Even the cultivators in Wuguang City could feel that the fluctuations of the ruins were getting bigger and bigger. Everyone could feel that the excitement of the cultivators in Wuguang City was gradually increasing. Originally, they could still cultivate quietly, but now they were completely in a state of anxiety. Boss, I heard that there are already some cultivators guarding near the ruins. Should we also set off? After Xia Jiqing learned the news in the city, she immediately returned to the house and told Bailey Hongzhuang about the current situation. Gong Xiaoqing and the others were also in the house. The opening of the ruins was getting closer and closer, and their hearts uncontrollably emerged with a sense of tension. Bailey Hongzhuang waved her hand slightly. The ancient ruins have just appeared today. The restriction will disappear in about 3 days. We don't have to be so anxious. She believed that as long as the cultivators had some understanding of the ruins, they would not choose to go now. The wilderness could be attacked by monsters at any time. Mental tension was not a good state. If they stayed there for 3 days, when the ruins were really opened, they would not have the energy to fight for the treasures. Listening to Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Xia Jiqing and the others looked at each other and nodded. On this point, Bailey Hongzhuang's understanding was far more than theirs. Since Hongzhuang said so, it proved that Hongzhuang must be confident. I was wondering, there are still many cultivators in the city who haven't made a move yet. I thought it was strange before, so it was like this. Xia Jiqing smiled. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. After 2 days, we will set off and wait for the restriction to disappear completely. As the head of the Bailey family in her previous life, she was quite familiar with the ruins. It would take about 3 days for the restriction to disappear from the ruins. Although there would be some differences in the time of each ruin, there would definitely be no problem for them to set off 2 days later. Only in this way could they maintain a relatively good state. The ruins are about to open. I'm really nervous. Yuan Xiaoman couldn't hide the excitement on her face. I've only heard about how powerful the ruins are before, but I didn't expect that I would have the opportunity to see it with my own eyes this time. There are many dangers in the ruins. If you're not careful, you may lose your life. Xiaoman, you can't be too excited. Xia Jiqing couldn't help but say. Ever since she saw the ancient ruins in the Falling Cloud mountain range, she knew that the ruins were not simple. Although this thing was very exciting to talk about, the dangers involved were really shocking. Listening to Xia Jiqing's words, Yuan Xiaoman's eyes flashed with surprise. She looked at Xia Jiqing in confusion. Jiqing, you're so knowledgeable. Have you seen enough ruins? Chapter 1364. Seeing that Xia Jiqing had actually seen the ancient ruins with Bailey Hongzhuang and the others, Yuan Xiaoman's mouth couldn't help but turn into an O shape. This was too unbelievable. Ancient ruins, that was something that many cultivators couldn't see in their lifetime, but Xia Jiqing and the others could team up to see it together. This was really not an ordinary fate. Yuan Xiaoman and Yuan Jixin looked at each other. In any case, they were now part of the team. Jiqing, tell me about the last time you entered the ancient ruins. What was it like? Yuan Xiaoman came to Xia Jiqing's side. She was really curious about the ancient ruins. If she could get some experience from Xia Jiqing, she could pay more attention when entering the ancient ruins in the future. Seeing that Yuan Xiaoman was extremely interested in this, Xia Jiqing also opened her mouth and excitedly told Yuan Xiaoman about what she had seen in the ancient ruins before. Gong Shaoqing and the others looked at the excited Xia Jiqing and Yuan Xiaoman, and there was a faint smile in their eyes. Speaking of which, Xia Jiqing and Yuan Xiaoman's characters were very similar, and the two were particularly congenial. The tension that had emerged because the ancient ruins was about to open was reduced a bit by Xia Jiqing and Yuan Xiaoman's chatter. 2 days later, Xia Jiqing and the others found that there were fewer and fewer cultivators in Wuguang City. Everyone had rushed to the place where the ancient ruins were located. However, there were also some cultivators who had not yet set off. Let's go too. Bailey Hongzhuang glanced at the people who were ready and said, Okay. Everyone nodded. They believed that the ancient ruins would open tomorrow, and they should indeed set off. With the departure of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others, many cultivators in Wuguang City also set off. The cultivators who set off at this time were often cultivators who had some understanding of the ancient ruins. Otherwise, they wouldn't dare to wait until now. Along the way, there were other teams around Bailey Hongzhuang and the others, but no one had the slightest communication. They just quickly went to the place where the ancient ruins were located. In this situation, everyone didn't even have the idea of provoking opponents. They just wanted to mind their own business. After all, the ancient ruins were the most important treasures. When Bailey Hongzhuang and the others arrived at the area where the ancient monument was located, they saw a sea of people. At a glance, the ground was full of cultivators, and everyone was looking at the ancient monument. Seeing such a spectacular scene, Xia Jiqing and the others couldn't help but exclaim, Aren't there too many people? What a surprise. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the crowd and sighed. There are already many cultivators participating in the assessment. Now almost half of them have gathered together. Gong Xiaoqing frowned. Hongzhuang, there's so many cultivators here. Could Han Xiling and the rest be here too? As Gong Xiaoqing's voice fell, the expressions of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others changed. For them, Han Xiling was always a hidden danger. It was best to solve it as soon as possible. Bailey Hongzhuang's phoenix eyes narrowed slightly, and her pretty face was filled with thoughts. Han Xiling is also likely to appear here. Chapter 1365. After knowing this, everyone was more careful when they paid attention to their surroundings. A cold and despicable guy like Han Xiling might make some sneak attacks at any time, so they had to be on guard. Let's find a place to sit down first. Bailey Hongzhuang said slowly. Everyone nodded. The front of the monument was already full of cultivators. They could only find a place to sit down casually, which was not close to the gate of the monument. Usually, this area was a place where demonic beasts wreaked havoc. However, as more and more cultivators gathered, the demonic beasts began to disperse. Not far away, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others could still see the bodies of monsters. Clearly, in the past 2 days, the cultivators here have been extremely busy. After dealing with a lot of demonic beasts, the demonic beasts were afraid of them and did not appear again. Xia Jiqing and the others could find that among the cultivators at the front, many people's mental state was not very good. At this moment, everyone couldn't help but admire Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang was right. It was useless to come here too early. On the contrary, it would affect their own state. Now that they were here, the monsters would no longer appear, which undoubtedly saved them a lot of trouble. Not far away, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes fell on Bailey Hongzhuang. Since knowing that Bailey Hongzhuang was here, he couldn't help but pay attention. The waste that was suppressed by him in the beginning had now become like this. He had seen the lonely appearance of the crown prince with his own eyes. This kind of counterattack was really unacceptable to him. Hongzhuang, just as Bailey Hongzhuang closed her eyes and prepared to cultivate, a familiar voice sounded in front of her. Hearing this call, not only Bailey Hongzhuang, but Gong Xiaoqing and the others also looked in the direction of the voice. With this look, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were surprised to find that the other party turned out to be Mo Yunjue, who they hadn't seen for a long time. Mo Yunjue was still wearing a black robe with silver bamboo embroidered on it. With the movements of Mo Yunjue, it bloomed a little silver light. After not seeing each other for a while, Mo Yunjue was as handsome as before, and a noble aura lingered. Mo Yunjue's nobility was not the same as Di Beichen's domineering nobility. His nobility was full of a reserved depth. At first glance, you wouldn't feel his nobility and domineering, but the closer you got, the more frightened you were. Because he was like a black hole, you couldn't see the bottom. Many of the cultivators present looked at Mo Yunjue, and most of them were women. Although Mo Yunjue had been sitting there without saying a word, his handsome appearance and extraordinary aura had already attracted many people's attention. Following Mo Yunjue's gaze, everyone saw an otherworldly and alluring figure. If a group of female cultivators had some jealousy in their hearts at this moment, after seeing Bailey Hongzhuang, those dissatisfied words could not be spoken, because this woman was also very outstanding. Xin Yuanhuan and Bailey Haoxuan were sitting next to Mo Yunjue. Previously, they were afraid of Mo Yunjue's team, not for other reasons, but because Mo Yunjue was a cultivator from a large empire. Chapter 1366. However, Xin Yuanhuan and the others did not expect that a cultivator from a large dynasty would know Bailey Hongzhuang. Mo Yunjue's figure swept and slowly walked in front of Bailey Hongzhuang. Hongzhuang, long time no see. Mo Yunjue's lips curled into a faint smile. His pair of eyes, which were as deep as a black hole, were shining like stars. He was very happy. I didn't expect you to participate in the assessment. Her light and pleasant voice could not hide her surprise. Since the last time they parted in the Qing dynasty, Bailey Hongzhuang had no news of Mo Yunjue. She originally thought that she would not have a chance to see him in the future. She did not expect to see him in this assessment. It was really a coincidence. Mo Yunjue chuckled. I know that you are participating in the assessment, so I specially participated. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang's smile widened a little. She only thought that Mo Yunjue was joking and did not take it to heart. She had always been curious about the identity of Mo Yunjue. The last time she saw him in the Qing dynasty, she felt that Mo Yunjue should not be just a restaurant owner in the Qing dynasty. Moreover, this time Mo Yunjue did not represent the Qing dynasty in the assessment, but participated in the assessment as a cultivator from another dynasty. This point alone was enough to prove that Mo Yunjue was not just a person from the Qing dynasty. However, Bailey Hongzhuang did not notice the seriousness in Mo Yunjue's eyes. Young Master Mo, I didn't expect to meet you here. Xia Jiqing's face was filled with a deep smile. The last time Mo Yunjue helped them in the Qing dynasty, they remembered clearly, so they had always been grateful. His handsome face was full of smiles. Mo Yunjue's eyes swept over Gong Shaoqing and the others and smiled. You are actually in the same team. This is really great. It seemed that Di Beichen really cared about Bailey Hongzhuang. Almost at the moment when he saw Gong Shaoqing and the others, Mo Yunjue had already understood all of this. If it were not for Di Beichen's arrangement, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others would not have appeared in this assessment in the form of a small team. Gong Shaoqing and the others smiled. Along the way, almost all the acquaintances they met in the assessment were enemies. It was really a good feeling to meet a friend. Back then, Mo Yunjue's help to them was deeply engraved in their hearts. Therefore, everyone liked Mo Yunjue very much. Young Master, which dynasty are you representing to participate in the assessment competition? Bailey Hongzhuang asked with a smile, her ink-black phoenix eyes filled with curiosity. Qian Feng Dynasty, Mo Yunjue said with a smile. Hearing the name of the Qian Feng Dynasty, Xia Jiqing and the others exclaimed. This Qian Feng Dynasty was a large dynasty. Moreover, the Qian Feng Dynasty was not an ordinary large dynasty, but the real powerhouse of a large dynasty. Mo Yunjue, being able to represent the Qian Feng Dynasty in the assessment competition, had already proved that his identity was not simple. The larger the dynasty, the more fierce the competition. Not only that, this also proved that Mo Yunjue's strength was very strong. Gong Shaoqing and Dongfang Yu looked at each other. Before, they felt that Mo Yunjue's identity was not simple. Otherwise, Mo Yunjue would not dare to offend the royal family of the Qing dynasty. It turned out that Mo Yunjue was not from the Qing dynasty. Young Master Mo, I didn't expect you to be from the Qian Feng dynasty. You are really amazing. Chapter 1367. Are you here on behalf of Tiangang's sect? Mo Yunjue frowned slightly, and his handsome eyes were filled with some doubts. But there was a hint of understanding in the depths of his eyes. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. But we now call ourselves the Tiangang dynasty. Hearing this, Mo Yunjue's eyes changed a bit, but he did not care much about this title. Because of Han Shilin, Mo Yunjue teased. With Mo Yunjue's voice falling, the faces of Bailey Hongzhuang and others changed slightly, and they looked at Mo Yunjue with slight surprise. They did not expect Mo Yunjue to know about Han Shilin. Feeling the eyes of everyone, Mo Yunjue explained very indifferently. Tiangang sect's young Lord Di Beichen and Han Shilin have always been called a match made in heaven. You are now in such a situation, you can understand it if you look carefully. Xia Jiqing and others suddenly understood. So that's how it is. They only knew that the cultivators of Tiangang sect had always regarded Di Beichen and Han Shilin as a pair, but they did not expect so many people to know about this. Mo Yunjue, as a cultivator of a large dynasty, naturally knew a lot more than them. It seems that Han Shilin did not make it difficult for you. Mo Yunjue looked at the expressions of everyone, and his heart had already understood. Yuan Jixin and Yuan Xiaoman on the side were completely dumbfounded when they learned that Bailey Hongzhuang and others were here on behalf of Tiangang's sect. They also felt that the name Tiangang Dynasty seemed to have something to do with Tiangang's sect, but a team of 5 people, they did not think much about it. They just thought that it was an ordinary small dynasty. Now, listening to the conversation of Mo Yunjue and others, the two of them understood. Yuan Xiaoman's eyes were full of amazement. She said that with the strength of the boss, how could he come from a small dynasty? However, Tiangang's sect, what a powerful sect. Tiangang's sect's young lord. Yuan Jixin muttered to himself, constantly repeating the name of Di Beichun. When Di Beichun went to the Yuan family earlier, he felt that the name Di Beichun was very familiar, but he did not think much about it. Now he knew that Di Beichun was the young lord of Tiangang's sect. No wonder Di Beichun and Bailey Hongzhuang were so unscrupulous when they were in Yuan Martial City. With such a noble identity, they naturally did not need to be scrupulous. Yuan Hanyang and the others were acquainted with 2 great characters. At this moment, Tiangang's sect, but at this moment, when she heard Yuan Jixin's of sex, Atz's with sect, sect, S sex, young sect, S sect. Oh my God. Yuan Xiaoman was completely dumbfounded. What kind of noble status was that? She actually recognized Tiangang, sect's young sect mistress as her boss. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others did not notice the change in Yuan Xiaoman's expression and continued to chat with Mo Yunjue. I heard that Han Xiling is also participating in this year's competition. Could it be that you? Mo Yunjue's gaze landed on Bailey Hongzhuang. Although everyone had been talking about how powerful Han Xiling was, he didn't think that Han Xiling was that powerful. It was just a rumor. With Bailey Hongzhuang's speed of improvement, if she were to encounter Han Xiling, it would be hard to say who would win. Chapter 1368. Although Mo Yunjue only said half of his words, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others all understood what he meant. Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head slightly. We were separated by a strange combination of factors, so we didn't solve it. With Bailey Hongzhuang's voice falling, even Xia Jiqing and the others couldn't help but look at Bailey Hongzhuang in amazement. These words were too domineering. Bailey Hongzhuang's expression was indifferent. These were her heartfelt words. For such a disgusting Han Xiling, she only hoped to get rid of her as soon as possible. She didn't want to wait until the end of the assessment to see Han Xiling. That woman, after leaving Tiangang's sect this time, she didn't need to go back. Mo Yunjue looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with appreciation. He had to say that Bailey Hongzhuang's courage was really not something an ordinary person could have. If I see Han Xiling, I will inform you. How about it? Mo Yunjue said with a smile. You know Han Xiling? Bailey Hongzhuang frowned slightly. Although many cultivators may have heard of Han Xiling, not many people would know what Han Xiling looked like. Mo Yunjue smiled faintly. Just like Di Beichun is the dream lover of many female cultivators, Han Xiling is also the dream lover of many male cultivators. Although I have no interest in her, I've seen her portrait. The next moment, Mo Yunjue took a step closer to Bailey Hongzhuang. The corners of his mouth outlined a charming arc, and he said in her ear, "She is not as beautiful as you." After that, Mo Yunjue had already stood up straight, looking at Bailey Hongzhuang with a smile. Thank you for the compliment. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips evoked a smile, and she accepted Mo Yunjue's praise very calmly. She had always been very confident in her appearance. Even in the face of Han Xiling, she was not worried at all. The restriction of this monument will probably disappear tomorrow morning. When you enter the monument, you have to be more careful. Mo Yunjue said slowly, I will go back to the team first. Okay. After Mo Yunjue left, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others sat down. I didn't expect to meet young Master Mo here. What a coincidence. Xia Jiqing said with a smile. Bai Junyu nodded. Maybe young Master Mo will enter the same sect with us in the future. Everyone looked at each other and smiled. They had thought that they had only met once, but it seemed like there would be many more interactions in the future. Bailey Haoshuan looked at the conversation between Bailey Hongzhuang and Mo Yunjue, and his eyes were filled with a thick color of surprise. Your Highness, is this man also an admirer of Bailey Hongzhuang? Bailey Haoshuan frowned. Men were the most accurate in judging other men. Just from the attitude and eyes of the man in black, he could judge that the man in black had special feelings for Bailey Hongzhuang. Isn't Bailey Hongzhuang already married to Di Beichen? He still comes out to flirt. Bailey Haoshuan was somewhat contemptuous. No matter how powerful Bailey Hongzhuang was now, in his eyes, she was still the annoying Bailey Hongzhuang. If it weren't for Bailey Hongzhuang, there wouldn't be so many things happening in the general's mansion. Listening to Bailey Haoshuan's accusation, Xinyuan Huan's eyebrows flashed with impatience. Bailey Haoshuan, Hongzhuang is not such a person. Don't talk nonsense. If Bailey Hongzhuang was really a fickle woman, there were many cultivators who pursued her in the academy, but she didn't respond at all. Chapter 1369. Bailey Haoshuan looked at Xinyuan Huan in surprise. He wanted to let the crown prince vent his anger. He didn't expect the crown prince to be so protective of Bailey Hongzhuang. He really couldn't understand. He didn't think Bailey Hongzhuang was good at all. Xinyuan Huan's heart became more and more emotional. This black-clothed man was obviously an excellent cultivator. Even though Di Beichen's status was so high, after seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's amazing growth speed, he also felt that the future Bailey Hongzhuang would definitely not be weak. After seeing Xinyuan Huan's gradually dignified face, Bailey Haoshuan couldn't help but shut his mouth. If he angered the crown prince because of this, he would really be asking for trouble. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others talked for a while. When they were about to rest, Mo Yunjue's figure appeared in everyone's sight again. Seeing Mo Yunjue suddenly return, everyone was a little surprised. Mo Yunjue smiled faintly and sat down beside Bailey Hongzhuang. He said, "The medium-sized Empire's team has a total of 8 people. I see that your team only has 7 people. Including me, you make 8 people. How about it?" Hearing this, everyone couldn't help but be stunned. For a moment, they didn't understand what Mo Yunjue meant. "Young Master Mo, you mean you want to join our team?" Bai Junyu couldn't help but ask. Mo Yunjue nodded slightly. "Yes, that's what I mean. Can you agree to let me join?" Everyone looked at Mo Yunjue, and for a moment, they didn't know how to answer. Logically speaking, with such a powerful cultivator joining their team, they would naturally welcome him. However, Mo Yunjue didn't stay in a large Empire's team. Instead, he came to join their team. This was too strange, wasn't it? For a moment, everyone couldn't help but look at Bailey Hongzhuang. Come to think of it, there was only one reason why Mo Yunjue wanted to join them, and that was Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang turned to look at Mo Yunjue and asked, "Why did you join our team?" "I'm your friend, so it's easier for me to get along with you," Mo Yunjue said with a natural expression. Qianfeng Dynasty is a large dynasty team. It will be more convenient for you to stay in your own team. Bailey Hongzhuang quickly said. Speaking of which, Mo Yunjue had always been an enigma to her. However, one thing she was certain of was that Mo Yunjue had no ill intentions towards them. "I like challenges and adventures," Mo Yunjue replied. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Mo Yunjue speechlessly and then said, "The real reason." Seeing this, Mo Yunjue sighed helplessly. "Well, I don't get along well with those guys. They're all arrogant people. No one is willing to submit to anyone. It's too troublesome." Hearing this, Xia Jiqing and the others understood. Qianfeng Dynasty's national strength was so strong. The cultivators it selected were naturally very strong. These geniuses had always been aloof and gathered in a team. Obviously, no one would be willing to submit to them. Not to mention Qianfeng Dynasty, even some small dynasty teams would have such a situation. The internal problems of Qianfeng Dynasty should be more obvious. Chapter 1370. Speaking of which, among the teams participating in the assessment, there were very few teams that could be as united as the Tiangang Dynasty. This was the most profound feeling that Yuan Jixin and Yuan Xiaoman had after joining Bailey Hongzhuang's team. Thinking back to when they were in the Snow Origin Dynasty team, Zhu Weiqing's opinions were always contrary to theirs, and every time there was inevitably a conflict. It was just that he and Xiaoman didn't want things to get out of hand, so they often chose to endure. Boss, if young Master Mo is not happy in the Qianfeng Dynasty team, then let him join us, Xia Jiqing slowly said. Moreover, with young Master Mo as a master, the strength of our team can be enhanced. Although she hadn't seen Mo Yunjue fight, she could judge that Mo Yunjue was definitely not weak. Miss Xia is right. We are friends, and forming a team together is also an excellent choice, right? Mo Yunjue smiled at Bailey Hongzhuang. Since knowing that Bailey Hongzhuang was going to participate in the assessment, he immediately chose to participate in the assessment. The assessment had already begun for a few months, and he had been looking for Bailey Hongzhuang, but he didn't get any news. Now that he finally found Bailey Hongzhuang, he couldn't just leave like this. Bailey Hongzhuang looked deeply at Mo Yunjue. She always felt that the reason was not so simple. Is it really like this? Mo Yunjue nodded seriously. Of course it is true. It is rare to meet in this assessment. Isn't it a kind of fate? Master, this Mo Yunjue joining the team is also good. The deeper we go into the center of the small world, the stronger the cultivators we will encounter in the future. This Mo Yunjue is very strong. With him joining the team, the strength of the team will be improved a lot. Xiao He smiled. Xiao Bai glanced at Mo Yunjue and said to Bailey Hongzhuang, Master, I think this guy has taken a liking to you. As Xiao Bai finished speaking, Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but be stunned for a moment. A helpless expression appeared on her face. He knows that I've already married Beichen. She had never hidden the news of her marriage with Di Beichen from anyone. From the moment she accepted Di Beichen, she never had any other thoughts. Hearing this, Xiao Bai nodded. That's true. Then what are you worried about? In any case, Mo Yunjue won't harm us. Xiao He was very calm. If Mo Yunjue wanted to harm them, he could have done it back then. There was no need for him to wait until now. If young Master Mo is willing, then join our team, Gong Xiaoqing slowly said. Back then, Mo Yunjue had done them a great favor. If they could repay Mo Yunjue now, that would be something they were willing to do. Mo Yunjue's handsome face broke into a joyful smile. Thank you very much. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Mo Yunjue helplessly. In fact, she really could not find a reason to reject. If Mo Yunjue really needed help, as long as she could do it, she would not reject. In the future, our team will officially be promoted to a middle-tier empire team. Bai Junyu smiled. With this number of people, in addition to Xiao He, Xiao Bai, and Bai Shi, their numbers would be close to that of a large empire team. Chapter 1371, Qianfeng Dynasty. Young Lord just joined Bailey Hongzhuang's team. Will he be in danger? A cultivator's face was filled with worry. Bailey Hongzhuang's team, including the young master, only had 8 people. There were many powerful cultivators in this assessment competition. Even if young Lord was powerful, he might not be able to fend off others. Moreover, young Lord still had to protect Bailey Hongzhuang. Young Lord told us to stay here obediently. Let's stay here obediently. In my opinion, we should carefully follow behind young Lord and try not to be discovered. If young Lord is in danger, we can also help. How can it be so simple? Young Lord has already told us not to disturb him. If young Lord's sweetheart finds out, young Lord will definitely blame us. For a moment, the cultivators from Qianfeng Dynasty had a bitter expression. In fact, they didn't need to participate in this assessment competition at all. It was just that young Lord suddenly said that he wanted to participate in the assessment competition. So, they came. Speaking of which, young Lord just wanted to see his sweetheart. After so many years, it's rare to see young Lord like someone. We must support him. As soon as one of the cultivators finished speaking, the others nodded in agreement. They participated in the assessment competition this time to give young Lord and his sweetheart more opportunities to be together. After a few months, the young master had finally found his sweetheart. They couldn't affect the young master. Xin Yuan Huan and the others also heard the conversation of the cultivators from Qianfeng Dynasty. Their expressions changed again and again. Bailey Haoxuan was speechless. How did the cultivators from Qian Feng Dynasty come to participate in the assessment competition? They were obviously here to pursue Bailey Hongzhuang. Moreover, the man just now was actually their young lord. To be able to be called young lord in a powerful dynasty like Qian Feng Dynasty, it was enough to show how extraordinary that man was. In comparison, they were simply dregs. Xin Yuan Huan's expression changed a little. Everything was as he had guessed before. The man also had feelings for Bailey Hongzhuang. Back then, she was merely the daughter of a small dynasty's general. Now, even an extraordinary figure from a large dynasty had to spare no effort to woo her. The distance between them was indeed an insurmountable chasm. Thinking of this, the smile on Xin Yuan Huan's face became even more bitter. Even though he knew that there was no hope, his heart still ached every time he thought about it. Time gradually passed, and the night quietly passed. For the entire night, not a single demonic beast appeared. Everyone was waiting for the restriction to end with rapt attention. In comparison, the cultivators from the large empires were the calmest. The cultivators from the medium empires were extremely excited. On the other hand, the cultivators from the small empires were constantly looking around, hoping to be the first to notice the opening of the ruins. As the sky gradually brightened up, many cultivators had already exited their cultivation state and focused their mental powers on the ruins in front of them. The enormous ruins were several times larger than the ruins that Bailey Hongzhuang and the others had seen last time. The golden ruins exuded a noble and majestic aura. Chapter 1372. Outside this magnificent ruin, a faint layer of golden light was faintly discernible. As the breeze blew, ripples appeared. However, such a layer of light that seemed easy to break was extremely hard. In the process of waiting for the restriction to dissipate, there were many cultivators who tried to forcibly break through this layer of restriction, but in the end, they all returned without success. The restriction laid down by the owner of the ruin was not easy to break, and its power was far beyond everyone's imagination. This ruin is really huge. Xia Jiqing couldn't help but stand up. Looking at the huge ruin in front of her, her face was full of emotion. Because it was night when they came, she didn't look at the ruin carefully. Now that she looked carefully, she felt the huge shock. Gong Shaoqing and the others' faces were full of amazement. The strength of these strong cultivators was really amazing. It took a lot of effort to create such a ruin, not to mention the inheritance in this ruin. The bigger the ruin, the greater the risk inside. Everyone should be extra careful. Mo Yunjue saw that everyone was immersed in the magnificence of the ruin, and he couldn't help but remind them. Bailey Hongzhuang's phoenix eyes slightly raised and looked at Mo Yunjue faintly. It seemed that Mo Yunjue also had a certain understanding of this ruin. Feeling Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze, Mo Yunjue still smiled faintly. The dangers of ancient ruins are recorded in many ancient books. Hearing this, Xia Jiqing and the others nodded. Ancient ruins were extremely extraordinary existences, but for them, the most important thing was to be alive to obtain the treasures inside. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the cultivators around her. As the sky became brighter, many cultivators could be seen clearly. Master, Han Shilling hasn't appeared yet. Could it be that he won't come? Xiao He frowned. It was reasonable to say that Han Shilling would not come with such a good opportunity. However, the ruins were about to open, but there was still no sign of Han Shilling. This was very strange. Considering how annoying Han Shilling is, he might have offended some powerful cultivators in the past few months. He might even be on his way to meet the King of Hell, said Xiao Bai. Bailey Hongzhuang's phoenix eyes, deep as a pool, flashed with a thoughtful light. She wrinkled her nose. No one could be sure of the current situation. As long as Han Shilling isn't dead, we'll meet him sooner or later in this small world. Bailey Hongzhuang's voice was cold. Ever since she first met Han Shilling, the conflict between them had become more and more intense. If he waited until he returned to Tiangang's sect to solve it, it would undoubtedly become troublesome. With the existence of the Great Elder, Han Shiling's position was not easy to shake. Therefore, the best way to deal with Han Shiling during the assessment was to deal with him. Xiao He and Xiao Bai nodded together. God has eyes. He won't let that woman continue to be free. Look, the restriction is getting lighter and lighter. At this time, a surprise voice came into everyone's ears. Immediately afterward, many figures sitting on the ground stood up one after another, their eyes fixed on the constantly fluctuating restriction. In everyone's eyes, the golden restriction was getting lighter and lighter, and the energy ripples were gradually weakening. It was obvious that it was about to completely dissipate. Chapter 1373. Her beautiful face was calm and dignified. Bailey Hongzhuang turned around and looked at Xia Zhiqing and the others, her light voice full of seriousness. The ancient ruins are about to open. After we go in, try not to disperse and listen to all the arrangements. According to her understanding of the ancient ruins, this ruin was so huge that there would be a lot of treasures inside. Similarly, there would be more dangers. If they only wanted to grab the treasures, it was very likely that they would lose their lives there. Only by being careful and calmly facing all the situations could it be possible to leave the ancient ruins safely. Mo Yunjua looked at the calm and serious Bailey Hongzhuang at the moment, and his deep dark eyes were filled with a touch of appreciation. In such a situation, Bailey Hongzhuang's leadership and commanding ability were completely revealed. The serious Bailey Hongzhuang exuded an indescribable charm. She was so young, but she gave people a feeling of iron bones, making people unable to ignore her. She was always so dazzling that people could notice her at the first moment, and their eyes could not move for a long time. Just like the first time he saw Bailey Hongzhuang, she was so calm and brave, far from what an ordinary woman could have. "Boss, we understand," Yuan Xiaoman responded. Although she was very excited to see the ancient ruins for the first time, she also understood the danger that the boss was talking about. According to the information she had learned before, every time the ancient ruins opened, it was unknown how many cultivators fell in it. If they were not careful, it would be difficult to come out alive. Gong Xiaoqing and the others' faces were also serious, and the original excitement were completely thrown out of their minds. The opening of the ruins did not mean that they could get treasures. This was just the beginning. Looking at everyone's calm appearance, Bailey Hongzhuang was also relieved that they were not blinded by excitement. After a stick of incense, under everyone's expectant eyes, the last trace of the restriction finally dissipated completely. The ancient ruins really appeared in front of everyone, and the huge palace door seemed to have a mysterious power, deeply attracting everyone present. The ruins are open. Everyone go in. The moment the ruins opened, many cultivators rushed towards the ruins like locusts. It was as if he was a second late, the treasures inside would not be fated with him. "Boss, let's go." Seeing that everyone had started to move, Yuan Zhixin also spoke out. The treasures in these ruins were all ownerless, so it was always first come, first served. If one was late, they would always be at a disadvantage. Wait a moment. Just as everyone was about to set off, Mo Yunjue's voice suddenly rang out. Everyone couldn't help but look at Mo Yunjue. They didn't know what Mo Yunjue wanted. When the door to the ruins opens, there might be some kind of mechanism. Let's wait for a while before going in. Xia Zhiqing and the others looked at Mo Yunjue and then looked at Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang was their real captain. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. Then let's wait for a while. It's not too late for us to act after someone goes in. She believed that since Mo Yunjue said so, he must have his reasons. Chapter 1374. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's reply, the smile on Mo Yunjue's lips widened as he leaned closer to Bailey Hongzhuang's ear and laughed. "I didn't expect you to trust me so much." Bailey Hongzhuang lifted her eyes and looked at Mo Yunjue speechlessly. "You're thinking too much. I'm just being careful." Mo Yunjue didn't take Bailey Hongzhuang's words to heart, and the smile in his eyes deepened. In the forest far away, a green figure's gaze was fixed on Bailey Hongzhuang. This Bailey Hongzhuang is really shameless. She usually pretends to be virtuous, but I thought she was sincere towards the young sect head. I didn't expect her to hook up with another man after participating in the assessment for just a few months. How shameless. Wu Yuexin's face was filled with disgust. For the past few days, they had been searching for Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest. Initially, their baffling disappearance had already shocked them greatly, and until now, they still didn't know what had happened. During the assessment, they didn't receive any news from Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest, and this made them especially angry. Most importantly, there were originally quite a number of cultivators representing Tiangang's sect, but after splitting into two, there weren't that many of them. Along the way, most of the dynasty's teams had treated them as a middle-sized dynasty's team, and this really infuriated them. That's right, the first time I saw Bailey Hongzhuang, I knew she was a seductive woman. If not, why would young sect master choose her? With her ability, I'm afraid it would be difficult for her to perform well in the assessment, so she can only rely on other men. What a pity. If young sect master was here, he would be able to see Bailey Hongzhuang's unbearable side. Han Shilling stared at the white figure in front of him as his eyes were filled with unprecedented hatred. Damned woman. Han Shilling clenched her fists tightly. The past few months in the small world was the most miserable period of her life. Almost no one believed that they were representing Tiangang's sect's team because there were just too few of them. Only the cultivators who were representing other sects to participate in the assessment could confirm their identities because she had followed her grandfather to many sects and knew quite a number of cultivators. However, now that she had met these cultivators, she could only run away. This was because she couldn't meet anyone in her current situation. Ever since that day when Bailey Hongzhuang used the silver needle on her, she had become a mute. She had hoped that she could recover after a period of time, but after such a long time, her throat didn't get better. To think that she, the dignified Han Shilling, had become a mute. If the cultivators who knew her, wouldn't she become a joke? Therefore, she definitely couldn't let the other cultivators. Therefore, under such circumstances, their days were extremely difficult. She only hoped that she could find Bailey Hongzhuang quickly and let Bailey Hongzhuang recover her throat. After not speaking for a few months, she had almost forgotten how to speak. Chapter 1375. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyebrows furrowed slightly. She vaguely felt a pair of eyes staring at her. Turning her gaze, Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the forest behind her. However, the lush greenery made it impossible for people to see clearly, so she didn't take it seriously. Now that everyone's attention was on the ancient ruins, how could there be cultivators paying attention to her? Just as Bailey Hongzhuang retracted her gaze, a burst of exclamations came from the front of the ruins. Everyone looked forward and saw the cultivators who rushed forward immediately after the restriction disappeared. After opening the door of the relic, countless sharp arrows flew out from the relic. Many cultivators didn't expect to encounter such a situation. Caught off guard, they were directly shot by the arrows and lost their lives. In the eyes of everyone, a large group of cultivators fell to the ground one after another. The arrows pierced their bodies and didn't give them any chance at all. In a short time, the door of the ruins had been stained with blood. A faint smell of blood filled the air, making people shudder. Looking at this sudden scene, many cultivators sucked in a breath of cold air. Heavens, this ancient era's ruin is too terrifying. We haven't even entered yet, and so many cultivators have already fallen. The situation inside must be even more terrifying. Yes, once we go in, I'm afraid we may not be able to come back alive. The owner of the ruins is really ruthless. The treasures inside are definitely not easy to take. This sudden scene made many cultivators terrified. For a while, they didn't have the courage to enter again. After Bailey Hongzhuang saw this scene, she couldn't help but look at Mo Yunjue beside her. She didn't expect Mo Yunjue's judgment to be so accurate. There was indeed a mechanism at the door. At this moment, Xia Jiqing and the others understood why Bailey Hongzhuang and Mo Yunjue were not in a hurry to set off immediately. It turned out that there was such a danger. Young Master Mo, you are really amazing. You can even judge this. Dongfang Yu looked at Mo Yunjue with surprise. Before this, there was no sign of a white that on the door of the ruins. Mo Yunjue was actually able to judge it. This was not easy. Everyone's eyes fell on Mo Yunjue. Just from Mo Yunjue's ability to judge the danger, they couldn't help but admire Mo Yunjue. I just remembered that there was such a rule in the ancient book when I read it before. In fact, I'm not sure, but I felt that it was best to be careful, so I stopped everyone from moving forward. Mo Yunjue's smile was modest, and his side appearance as if he really was just trying his luck. Following Mo Yunjue's words, Gong Shaoqing and the others nodded. There were indeed some records in some ancient books. Reading 10,000 books to travel 10,000 miles, this was really a good point. If Mo Yunjue didn't happen to know this, they might have been in danger. However, Bailey Hongzhuang looked deeply at Mo Yunjue. Her deep phoenix eyes were filled with a trace of exploration. She remembered Mo Yunjue's calm manner when he said this. She believed that Mo Yunjue must have judged it before he said such a thing. With Mo Yunjue's identity, he definitely wouldn't speak without thinking. Chapter 1376. With so many cultivators dying all of a sudden, many cultivators who wanted to enter the ruins could not help but stop in their tracks. The entrance of the ruins had just been opened, and they had already encountered such a terrifying attack. After they really walked into the ruins, they were afraid that there would be even more terrifying attacks. For a while, the cultivators who were originally close to the entrance of the ruins also retreated at this moment. After all, no one wanted to die. They just wanted to wait for someone to enter safely before they went in. Let's go in. Mo Yunjue's long eyebrows were slanted. His eyes were deep and confident. His lips evoked a charming smile as he looked directly at Bailey Hongzhuang beside him. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes turned slightly, and the two's eyes collided. Okay. With that, Mo Yunjue and Bailey Hongzhuang walked forward together. Xia Jiqing and the others followed closely, but they were not as calm as Bailey Hongzhuang. Young Master Mo, if we enter the ruins now, will there be more powerful attacks inside? Xia Jiqing's eyebrows could not hide the worry in her eyes. No one knew what the situation in the ruins was like. All of this was simply impossible to guard against. Although Gong Shaoqing and the others did not speak, they were also worried in their hearts. Now they were in the light, and the master of the ruins' mechanism was in the dark. If there was a trap inside, they would be completely a target as soon as they went in. They would only be courting death. Mo Yunjue's lips curled into a smile. His eyes that were as deep as a black hole flickered with confidence. His low and magnetic voice was filled with a reassuring power. According to my understanding, usually when the entrance of the ruins is opened, there will be the first wave of attack, and then there will be no problem entering. If the master of the ruins really arranged mechanisms everywhere, then who can get the inheritance? Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes flashed with wisdom. The design of the mechanism was often arranged by the master of the ruins at will. However, everything was as Mo Yunjue said. Usually, the master of the ruins would not arrange the mechanisms together. This was because once the traps appeared one after another, there would be countless deaths and injuries. It would be extremely difficult to successfully walk inside. The reason why the master of the ruins had set up the mechanism was to select a suitable successor, not to take people's lives. In fact, her thoughts were the same as Mo Yunjue's. Entering now might be an opportunity. However, Mo Yunjue was obviously more certain than she was. Riches and honor were sought in the midst of danger. Since that was the case, then they would give it their all. As Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest slowly approached the entrance of the ruins, almost all the cultivators had their eyes fixed on them. These guys are really gutsy. They still dare to rush up now. There's an 80 to 90% chance that they're courting death again. It's good to have such fellows. Let them scout the way first. We'll go in when it's safe. That's true. Isn't it courting death for a mid-tier dynasty team to rush up and pretend to be almighty? Everyone chuckled, but their eyes were locked onto Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. As long as they entered, they would be able to judge the situation inside the ruins, so they would be mentally prepared. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others really want treasures more than their lives. Chapter 1377. Xinyuan Huan's eyes were filled with worry. The ancient ruins in front of them were no longer a tempting treasure, but an infinite danger. It was too dangerous for Bailey Hongzhuang to go to the ruins now. However, he was in no position to talk to Bailey Hongzhuang, so he could only watch from the side. This Bailey Hongzhuang's courage is really not small. The man beside her is also willing to risk his life for her. Wu Yuexin frowned. If Bailey Hongzhuang could die in the ruins, it would be the best choice. However, she couldn't understand why the man would choose to go with Bailey Hongzhuang. He was obviously courting death. Bailey Hongzhuang's team has 3 more people than before. I don't know when these 3 people joined. The man beside Wu Yuexin noticed the change in Bailey Hongzhuang's team. When Bailey Hongzhuang's team left, there were only 5 people in the team. I think she just randomly recruited 3 people from a small empire's team. Wu Yuexin said coldly. Seeing Wu Yuexin's obvious disdain for Bailey Hongzhuang, the other cultivators could only put away their doubts. In this assessment, it seemed like it was easy to recruit 2 cultivators, but in reality, it was not easy. Not to mention that ordinary cultivators wouldn't leave their own team. Cultivators who were left alone were usually too weak. Most importantly, they didn't know the background of the new cultivators and couldn't trust them. Their team didn't have many people. They had thought of recruiting some cultivators, but the others didn't believe them. The intermediate empire's team wouldn't be willing to merge with them, and the small empire's team wasn't good enough for them. They thought that Bailey Hongzhuang's team would have a worse time with only 5 people, but they didn't expect Bailey Hongzhuang's team to be in the same situation as them. This kind of psychological disparity really made people feel uncomfortable. Under everyone's gaze, Bailey Hongzhuang's team slowly walked to the entrance of the ruins. Bailey Hongzhuang's footsteps paused, and she said, "You wait outside the door, Mo Yunjue, and I will go in and see the situation." Bailey Hongzhuang looked up at Mo Yunjue and said, "Do you have any objections?" Mo Yunjue's lips curled, and he raised his eyebrows. "Since you've said so, how would I dare to have any objections?" However, Gong Xiaoqing spoke first. "Hongzhuang, let's go in together. How can we let the 2 of you take the risk?" Along the way, Bailey Hongzhuang had been taking care of them. But he was older than Bailey, so he should take care of Bailey Hongzhuang. In such a situation, he couldn't agree to Bailey Hongzhuang's team going in first. As Gong Xiaoqing's voice fell, Xia Jiqing and the others nodded. "Boss, Gong Xiaoqing is right. Since we are a team, we should take the risk together." Bailey Hongzhuang's heart was warm, and she said, "Mo Yunjue and I are stronger. If there's really danger, we have a higher chance of avoiding it. This kind of unnecessary risk is not necessary. Besides, the risk is very small." Chapter 1378. Seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang's team was so united, Mo Yunjue's smile deepened. It had to be said that in this assessment competition, there weren't many teams that were as united as the Tiangang Dynasty's team. "Don't worry, there won't be any problems." Mo Yunjue chuckled. "I'll go in first. Wait till I'm sure there's no problem before you all come in." As he spoke, Mo Yunjue strode into the remains. "Wait," Bailey Hongzhuang wanted to stop him, but before she could finish her sentence, Mo Yunjue had already walked in. Seeing this, Gong Xiaoqing and the rest were stunned. They didn't expect Mo Yunjue to walk in just like that. Even though Mo Yunjue was sure that there wouldn't be any traps, but no one could guarantee that. However, the fact that Mo Yunjue walked in directly proved many things. If it was any other person, the other party wouldn't have done so. Without waiting for Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest to recover from their shock, Mo Yunjue's voice rang out in the hall. "No problem, come in." In the next moment, Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest walked into the remains. Just as they walked in, Bailey Hongzhuang saw Mo Yunjue's handsome face, which was full of smiles. "Can you rest assured now?" Bailey Hongzhuang looked speechlessly at Mo Yunjue, but her eyes flashed with a strange light. Mo Yunjue's earlier actions had shocked her. Such a risky action. Mo Yunjue was too crazy. "If you continue to disobey the arrangements, I won't allow you to continue staying in the team." Bailey Hongzhuang stared at Mo Yunjue, her clear eyes filled with seriousness. From the beginning to the end, Mo Yunjue had helped them too much. She couldn't let Mo Yunjue take more risks. Mo Yunjue saw that Bailey Hongzhuang was so serious. He immediately raised his right hand and said seriously, "Okay, next time I'll definitely obey Captain Bailey's arrangements." Uffed. Yuan Xiaoman couldn't help but laugh. Such a Mo Yunjue was really interesting. Xia Jiqing and the others also laughed. Obviously, Mo Yunjue was also a very interesting person. Okay, let's move on. Bailey Hongzhuang didn't dwell on this matter too much. They had finally entered the remains. Naturally, they had to start searching for treasures. Listening to the words of Bailey Hongzhuang, everyone also came back to their senses. Originally, they only thought that they would enter the monument very late. They did not expect that they would be the first to enter the monument. This was really fate. Ah! Bailey Hongzhuang suddenly screamed. Dongfang Yu and the others were stunned for a moment. They looked at Bailey Hongzhuang worriedly, only thinking that Bailey Hongzhuang had been attacked. However, Bailey Hongzhuang waved her hand to the crowd and pointed her finger outside the door of the monument. Suddenly, Xia Jiqing and the others understood. Ah! Xia Jiqing also screamed. Bang! Bai Junyu's figure fell to the ground. The movements of Yuan Jixin and the others were not slow. Since they wanted to pretend, they naturally had to pretend. Outside the ruins, as Bailey Hongzhuang and the others walked into the ruins, all the cultivators' eyes were fixed on the ruins. They wanted to know if Bailey Hongzhuang and the others would encounter any danger after entering. Chapter 1379. I knew that these guys would be throwing their lives away if they went. This ruin is too difficult to deal with. They can't enter at all. What treasures do they want? Everyone sighed helplessly. They thought that they were lucky to encounter such a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Who would have thought that the real situation turned out to be like this? Xin Yuan Huan's face became ugly. He didn't expect that Bailey Hongzhuang would really have an accident. Speaking of which, so many things had happened before. He actually didn't want to see Bailey Hongzhuang have an accident. He only hoped that Bailey Hongzhuang could live peacefully. Bailey Haoshuan's face also changed a little. Although he had a lot of opinions about Bailey Hongzhuang, he didn't expect that Bailey Hongzhuang would die in the ruin. It was really shocking. Ha! Bailey Hongzhuang really dug her own grave. Wu Yuexin's face showed a carefree smile. The trace of anger after seeing Bailey Hongzhuang had disappeared with Bailey Hongzhuang's death. God is really fair. We don't need to do anything. Bailey Hongzhuang has already died. Wu Yuexin turned to look at Han Xiling. She thought that Han Xiling would show a happy smile like her, but she didn't expect that Han Xiling's face would become extremely ugly. Miss Han, what's wrong? Wu Yuexin asked with concern. Han Xiling's face was pale. She naturally hoped that Bailey Hongzhuang would die, but she didn't want Bailey Hongzhuang to die now. At least, before Bailey Hongzhuang died, her throat had to be cured. Now that Bailey Hongzhuang was dead, didn't that mean that she could only be a mute for at least 2 years in the assessment competition? Just these few months, she had been driven crazy by this feeling. Thinking that she would be in this situation for more than a year, it was too unbearable. The most important thing was that Bailey Hongzhuang's trick was so strange. She had never seen anyone use such a method. If after leaving the small world, no one could cure her throat, then she might become a mute for the rest of her life. The more she thought, the paler Han Xiling's face became. Damn Bailey Hongzhuang. Even if she died, she still brought so much trouble to her. The other cultivators beside Han Xiling had already understood her thoughts after thinking for a while. Speaking of which, Han Xiling was really miserable now. Since that day when Bailey Hongzhuang and others disappeared from their sight, Han Xiling kept looking for Bailey Hongzhuang. However, in the end, it was all in vain. The current Han Xiling couldn't be compared to the Han Xiling in Tiangang sect. Even their feelings towards her had changed a little. If Han Xiling really became a mute, then her previous prestige would be gone. In the ruins, Bailey Hongzhuang and others looked at each other, and a smile appeared on their faces. Thinking about it, their trick should be able to scare a lot of cultivators. At least, they would hesitate for a while before coming in. This also bought them some time. Let's go. Bailey Hongzhuang lowered her voice. Chapter 1380. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others gradually moved forward. In the eyes of everyone, the whole monument was just like what they saw from the outside. It was magnificent and magnificent, giving people an indescribable feeling of magnificence. Every brick on the ground had exquisite lines. Walking in this palace, it was as if they had become a noble. Wow, this monument is really more magnificent than the palace. Xia Jiqing looked at everything around her. This feeling of magnificence made people feel like they were in a dream. The palaces she had seen were really not as magnificent as this one. Yuan Xiaoman nodded in agreement. Her face was full of amazement. This is a monument. It's really better to see it than to hear about it 100 times. The owner of this monument should also be a noble. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes flashed with amazement. It was the first time she had seen such a magnificent monument. Every layout inside was obviously carefully prepared, gorgeous, and noble. This was the favorite of some nobles, and only the real nobles would have such a taste. Mo Yunjua looked around and said, "I think so too. Master, this monument is very large. The valuable things should be in the depths." Xiao Hei's voice sounded. It was not the first time she had seen a monument. Every monument had such characteristics. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly, putting away her original amazement and speculation, and quietly quickened her pace. "Let's go in quickly." Although the trick just stopped the footsteps of other cultivators, there are many cultivators who are not afraid of death. It won't be long before the cultivators find all this. At that time, all the cultivators will rush in, and our good opportunity will not exist. Bailey Hongzhuang said aloud. Hearing this, Xia Jiqing and the others also nodded in agreement and quickened their pace towards the depths of the monument. After walking for a while, a small hall appeared in front of everyone. There was nothing in the hall, but there were 2 roads on both sides of the hall. Obviously, everyone could only choose one of these 2 roads. Bailey Hongzhuang sized up the 2 paths. However, the 2 paths were exactly the same, like mirrors. Even the lines on the bricks were exactly the same, making it difficult for her to tell. The owner of the ruins seems to have a high requirement for perfection. Every arrangement here is perfect to the extreme. When Mo Yunjue saw this scene, his pitch-black eyes were filled with astonishment and doubt. This kind of situation was rarely seen on a normal day. Bailey Hongzhuang paid attention to everything inside. She had a very strange feeling in her heart. She couldn't tell what it was, but she always felt that this ruin was different. "Which path should we take?" Bai Junyu asked. Right now, they didn't have much time to think. Every bit of time they wasted here meant that they had less time left. "The one on the left. The one on the left." 2 voices sounded at the same time. When Bailey Hongzhuang heard the same judgment as her, she couldn't help but look at the other side in surprise. Mo Yunjue's lips curved into a smile. "It seems that our judgment is the same." Bailey Hongzhuang rolled her eyes at Mo Yunjue. At this time, he was still in a mood to talk. "In that case, let's take the road on the left," Gong Xiaoqing said slowly. Chapter 1381. Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest walked into the passageway on the left. Apart from the sound of their footsteps, there was no other sound in the entire palace. It was so quiet that it was rather frightening. This passageway was very long, so Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest did not move very quickly. This was because they did not know if there would be any hidden mechanisms. Hence, every step they took was done carefully. This passageway is really long. Xiao Hei sat on Bailey Hongzhuang's shoulder with a puzzled look on her face. The last time they had entered the ancient ruins, they had seen many stone chambers upon entering. The stone chambers were filled with all sorts of treasures. However, they had walked quite a distance since they had entered the ruins, but they had not seen anything at all. Even though the surface area of the ruins was much larger than the area they had seen the last time, this situation was still rather strange. It was not only Xiao Hei, but Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest had the same feeling as well. Along the way, they felt as if they could not see the end. Outside the ruins, many cultivators remained on the spot as they stared at the dazzling golden ruins. Their eyes were filled with yearning and fear. After a period of stagnation, some cultivators chose to move forward again. Everyone knew that entering the ancient ruins carried risks. However, with such a huge treasure right in front of them, no one was willing to give up just like that. However, as the next group of cultivators approached, the danger that they had expected did not appear. On the contrary, they had entered the ruins without a hitch. After a brief moment of shock, the crowd began to react. Damn it, we've been tricked. Then, the crowd did not stay any longer and immediately walked into the depths of the ruins. Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest had entered earlier than them. If the treasures were to be snatched away by Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest, they would suffer a great loss. Han Xiling and the rest stood outside the ruins and waited for the situation to unfold. To them, the treasures in the ruins were naturally important, but their lives were more important. Especially Han Xiling. She already holds a high position in the Tiangang sect and has no lack of cultivation resources on a daily basis. It would be foolish of them to lose their lives for the sake of the ruins. However, after seeing the crowd of cultivators rushing into the ruins, Han Xiling and the rest's expressions changed. There are no traps in the ruins. We've been tricked by Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest. Wu Yuexin was the first to react. His originally carefree mood was instantly suppressed. Han Xiling waved his hand, and Wu Yuexin and the rest immediately rushed into the ruins. Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest had already taken the treasures. If they did not rush over there, the treasures would have been taken away by Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest. After Xianyuan Huan learned of all this, he was also surprised, but more than that, he was relieved. At least, Bailey Hongzhuang at this point. He could not help but admire Bailey Hongzhuang. With just a small trick, she had deceived so many cultivators. It was truly amazing. After Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest walked for a while, they finally saw the tightly shut stone rooms on both sides of the road. After seeing this scene, a happy smile appeared on the faces of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. They thought that there must be treasures in this stone room. Bang! Chapter 1382. The door of this stone room is really difficult to open. Gong Xiaoqing's eyes showed a touch of surprise. Although he did not use all of his strength in that attack, he still used about 50% of his strength. It was a bit strange that the door of the stone room could not be opened. Let's try again, Xia Jiqing quickly said. Boom! Gong Xiaoqing and Dong Fangyu attacked together. This time, both of them used 100% of their strength. However, under the attack of Gong Xiaoqing and Dong Fangyu, the door of the stone room still did not move. It seems that there should be a mechanism here. Unless we find the mechanism, I'm afraid that brute force will not be able to open the door of this stone room. Mo Yunjue's deep and magnetic voice rang out, and a serious look appeared on his handsome face. The strength of Gu Hanqing and Dong Fangyu is not weak. If it was an ordinary stone room door, it would have already been opened under the bombardment of the two of them. However, after these two attacks, the door of the stone room still did not change, which proved everything. With the strength of the master of the monument, if he did not want to use brute force to open the door of the stone room, then no matter what they tried, it would be useless. Unless their strength reached a certain level, they would not be able to break it by force. Bailey Hongzhuang's phoenix eyes slightly narrowed, and she nodded lightly. We have to work hard to find the mechanism. As her voice fell, Bailey Hongzhuang had already looked around the stone room door, hoping to find the mechanism. Xia Jiqing and the others also groped around. Just like the last time in the monument, they had learned that they could not ignore anything. The thoughts of the master of the monument were often arbitrary, so they could not miss a single detail. Time ticked by, and everyone kept touching every part of the stone room. However, there was no protrusion, no recess, and no hollow space. What kind of mechanism is this? After looking for so long, there is no mechanism at all. Yuan Xiaoman frowned, and there was a bit of impatience in her voice. It was not easy for them to seize the opportunity and enter the monument before the other cultivators, but now they could not enter the stone room door at all. In this kind of race against time, time was delayed like this. One could imagine the depression in his heart. Yuan Jixin patted Yuan Xiaoman's shoulder and said, "As long as we can get one of the treasures inside, It will be very difficult, so don't worry. Yuan Jixin is right. We must calm down and search. There must be a mechanism. Dongfang Yu immediately said. The last time he entered the ancient ruins, he was in the same state as Yuan Xiaoman. However, when Bailey Hongzhuang discovered the existence of the mechanism in front of everyone, he understood that it was not that there was no mechanism, but that they had overlooked it. Bailey Hongzhuang and Mo Yunjue both stood in place without moving. Not only did they land around the stone door, their faces were filled with contemplation. Bailey Hongzhuang rubbed her chin with her right hand. Every brick in this stone room was exactly the same. In addition, everyone had already searched for the existence of grooves and protrusions, but they still couldn't find anything. Thus, the location of the mechanism really made everyone curious. Where exactly is it? Chapter 1383. Master, the owner of this ruin is very meticulous. Not only are the bricks the same, even the patterns on the bricks are the same. Even the layout is exactly the same. It's so symmetrical that it looks like a fake. Xiao He was secretly speechless. It felt that the owner of this ruin could very well be a woman. If it had been a man, he would not have been in the mood to pay attention to all this. It simply could not imagine how much time the owner of this ruin had taken to build this ruin. Just looking at it gave it a sense of incredulity. As Xiao He spoke, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes lit up as if she had found the most important key. Everything is the same. Could there be something different? Bailey Hongzhuang mumbled. Things will move in the opposite direction when they reach an extreme. This was the law of many things. In a ruin like this, where everything was so orderly, the slightest difference could be the biggest problem. Bailey Hongzhuang immediately began to search for the difference at the thought of this. Everything was just as Xiao He had said. Everything here was symmetrical and balanced. Even the height of the patterns were exactly the same. There was not the slightest bit of deviation. Thud, thud, thud. A series of footsteps were heard from behind Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. Gong Xiaoqing and the others' expressions changed. They never thought that the other cultivators would arrive so quickly. Mo Yunjue couldn't help but look behind them. The cultivators who came later had saved a lot of time compared to them on the way here. This was because once there was a mechanism, they would find corpses. However, they had not seen a single drop of blood along the way. This proved that everything here was safe. Because of this, the cultivators behind them had arrived so quickly. Damn it, these fellows sure are fast. Bai Jinyu secretly spat. Once the other cultivators arrive, it would mean that the competition between them would become much more intense. The cultivators' eyes lit up when they saw Bai Jinyu and the others. They're over there. A group of cultivators rushed over. In fact, when they saw Bailey Hongzhuang and the others standing in front of the door of the stone room and did not enter, they were overjoyed. Although this group of people had entered much earlier than them, they still hadn't obtained anything. Naturally, they didn't have to be envious. The impatience on the faces of Yuan Xiaoman and the others became more and more obvious, while Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were firmly locked on the side of the door, not panicking because of the cultivators coming from behind. In the next moment, Bailey Hongzhuang took a step forward, her right hand directly touching an ordinary brick on the right side of the stone door. Rumble. A dull sound sounded, and Xia Jiqing and the others were stunned to find that the stone door that had been closed opened, and Bailey Hongzhuang was directly shrouded in a golden light and was directly sucked into the stone room. Xia Jiqing and the others immediately wanted to go in, but they found that a yellow light on the door of the stone room blocked them and did not let them go in. Remember to find the difference in the lines. At the moment when Bailey Hongzhuang was sucked into the stone room, her voice clearly passed into the ears of Xia Jiqing and the others. Boom! Chapter 1384. Xia Jiqing and the others stared blankly at Bailey Hongzhuang entering the stone room. The surprise in their hearts did not dissipate for a long time. There was actually such a strange way. Whoever opened the door of the monument, who could enter it? Others had no way to enter at all. Although this method was very strange, it was particularly fair and even reduced the situation of fighting with others. If the door of a stone room was opened and everyone could rush in, then there would be a big fight. Obviously, this was not the case now. Let's not waste time. quickly find a way to open the other stone rooms. When everyone was amazed, Mo Yunjue's voice had sounded. Speaking of which, their situation was undoubtedly much better than the other cultivators. At least, they had found a way to open the door of the stone room. Good. Gong Xiaoqing and the others nodded. Now is not the time to sigh. There are all kinds of treasures in the stone room. It was rare to have such an opportunity. They naturally had to seize the time. When the cultivators at the back saw Bailey Hongzhuang entering the stone room, their faces could not help but show a nervous look. The treasures in the monument were one less. They had to speed up. In a short time, a group of cultivators had rushed over, and Mo Yunjue and the others each stood in front of a stone room door. Since only one cultivator could enter each stone room, they had no choice but to split up. When the cultivators who arrived in front of the stone room saw Mo Yunjue and the others, although they were very dissatisfied with being deceived before, they were not in the mood to care about all this. They just crowded in front of the door, looking around for a way to enter the stone room. Bang! Bang, bang, bang! The sound of attacks sounded. Almost all the cultivators, when they saw the closed stone room door, their first thought was to force it open. However, the final result was the same as what Bailey Hongzhuang and the others had tried before. It was useless at all. While the other cultivators were using this method to break through the door, the cultivators from the Tiangang dynasty were standing quietly at the side, searching for a different existence. Suddenly, Mo Yunjue stepped forward, his figure jumped, and his right hand hit the top of the stone room door. Rumble! The door of the stone room slowly opened. The stone room door that had not been opened for years was also filled with dust when it opened. The stone room door is open. When the cultivators on the side saw the stone room door open, they did not care about the falling dust and rushed inside. However, the golden light was like a barrier blocking everyone's figure. Mo Yunjue stood indifferently in the same place, looking at the group of cultivators in front of him. His lips evoked a smile, his expression even more unscrupulous. Mo Yunjue even turned around and waved at Gong Xiaoqing and the others, indicating that he was going in. When Mo Yunjue and the others saw that Mo Yunjue was the second to find the mechanism, they nodded and immediately worked harder to find it. As long as they found the mechanism, they could get the treasure. In the next moment, under the furious gazes of all the cultivators, Mo Yunjue's figure was wrapped in a golden light, and he entered the stone room directly. Chapter 1385. What the hell is this? What kind of strange stone room is this? He's the only one who can enter? It seems that this stone room has a mechanism. Everyone, don't force your way in. After seeing Mo Yunjue enter the stone room, the other cultivators reacted one after another. Obviously, it was impossible to force their way in. The next moment, almost all the cultivators rushed to another stone room, jumped up fiercely, and reached out to the top of the stone room's door. Xia Jiqing, who was almost pushed away, saw everyone's actions, and a mocking smile appeared in her eyes. What a bunch of idiots. Not every stone room has a mechanism there. The cultivator who hit the top of the stone room's door showed a big smile on his face, and the other cultivators looked at him very enviously. After witnessing the scene just now, they understood that only one cultivator could enter each stone room. Obviously, they had no hope at all. Just as the cultivator was waiting for the stone room's door to open, Xia Jiqing hit the other side of the stone room's door. However, Xia Jiqing's hit was not as eye-catching as the cultivators, and everyone did not pay much attention to it. Hong Long Long. The stone room's door slowly opened, and the cultivator's face was full of excitement. He did not expect to open the stone room's door so easily. It was really cool. The other cultivators did not care about the stone room in front of them, and immediately rushed to the stone room in front of them. If they were late, there would be no chance. The man's face could not hide his excitement, and he immediately prepared to enter the stone room. However, as soon as he touched the golden light, he was directly bounced back. Seeing this, the man's eyes were full of confusion. Just as he was about to continue to try, he saw a golden light wrap around Xia Jiqing, and then she disappeared from the stone room. The man's eyes widened, and he looked at Xia Jiqing's disappearance in disbelief. How is this possible? How did she get in? The man couldn't understand. This great opportunity had been snatched away by someone else just like that. Looking at the other stone rooms, almost all the cultivators had already hit the mechanism. Didn't this mean that he didn't have any chance at all? Just as all the cultivators were waiting for the stone door to open, they realized that there was no movement at all. Immediately, everyone's expression turned ugly. Could it be that the mechanism of the stone room isn't here? But that man clearly went in just like that. What kind of strange mechanism is this? I simply don't understand. Following that, all of the cultivators started banging on the walls, hoping to find the mechanism. When Gong Shaoqing and the others saw how these cultivators were indulging in their fantasies, their eyes were filled with mockery. This mechanism needed to be found calmly, and it was impossible to find it with such actions. Bailey Hongzhuang stood in the middle of the stone room. This huge stone room was somewhat similar to the stone room in her primal chaos ring. It was just that it wasn't as magnificent as this one. She had a vague feeling that this palace was the imperial palace because it was too shocking. The entire stone chamber was extremely empty, except for a huge brocade box placed on the high platform in the center. Chapter 1386. Bailey Hongzhuang slowly walked forward. The layout of this place was different from the usual historical remains. Usually, there would be many items in the stone chamber of historical remains, but there was only one item here. She believed that the value of this treasure would not be low. As she walked closer, Bailey Hongzhuang kept an eye on the situation in the stone chamber. No one could guarantee that there would not be any unexpected mechanisms. Luckily, Bailey Hongzhuang did not encounter any mechanisms until she reached the brocade box. Master, this should be the treasure in the stone chamber. Whoever opens the stone chamber will be able to obtain it. Xiaobai slowly said. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded and immediately opened the brocade box. She was really curious about what was in such a large brocade box. When Bailey Hongzhuang opened the brocade box, her eyes instantly lit up. Pill furnace. Wow, wow, wow. It's actually a pill furnace. Xiaohei could not hide the excitement in her eyes. One look, and she knew that this pill furnace was not ordinary. Master is an alchemist, and all this while, Master has never had a suitable pill furnace. If the quality of this pill furnace was good enough, it would be a great weapon for Master to refine pills. Bailey Hongzhuang carefully sized up the pill furnace in front of her. The entirely black pill furnace was simple and unadorned and had a mysterious pattern all over it. However, when Bailey Hongzhuang saw the pattern on the pill furnace, the shock in her eyes intensified. As an alchemist, she naturally had a certain level of understanding towards pill furnaces. The higher the grade of the pill furnace, the better the effect. When an alchemist was refining pills, it could increase the success rate and preserve the medicinal properties of the herbs better, resulting in a better effect. In order to achieve this, the weapon refinement master and the inscription master would work together to place inscriptions on the pill furnace that were beneficial to refining pills. The pill furnace in front of her had an array drawn on it. If she guessed correctly, this array was the extremely rare 9 Heavens Xian inscription. She had heard of this inscription long ago, but this was the first time she had seen it. Usually, pill furnaces that could be engraved with 9 Heavens Xian inscription were of excellent quality and could not be compared to ordinary pill furnaces. In this life, until now, she did not have a suitable pill furnace when refining pills. During the inter-school competition, her alchemy furnace had even exploded. Right now, the pill furnace she was using was only slightly higher grade than the one that had exploded before. She was very clear in her heart that once the grade of the pill she refined increased again, this pill furnace would not be able to last for long. And now, this pill furnace had appeared in front of her. It was undoubtedly an excellent harvest. Bailey Hongzhuang's beautiful face blossomed into a happy smile. Bailey Hongzhuang carefully looked at the pill furnace in front of her. This pill furnace's appearance was really too good. The palace of the master of this ruin is so big. The treasures inside must be extraordinary. Xiaohei's face was filled with joy. Previously, it had complained that the layout of the ruins was too strange. Now it did not feel that way at all. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. Xiaohei was right. This was only the first stone room in the ruins, but there was actually a cauldron of this level. From this, one could see the quality of the treasures in this ruin.